Don't worry about it. I just walked into the biggest puddle ever. Wow, I was thinking about stuff again when I was at it.
Good morning, honorable members. I welcome
Morning,
all
Chairperson.
honorable members who have
Recording in
logged
progress.
Good morning,
into the
Chairperson.
morning,
Good morning, members.
Chairperson.
session.
Chair.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honorable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitute a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of the virtual sitting, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your mic and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of orders. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the virtual platform, members are asked to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session. Therefore, any decision will be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. The first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of Honorable J S Malema on the enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten in building non-racialism and social cohesion. Honorable members, I have been informed that the Honorable C.G. Niehaus will take charge of the subject for discussion. I now recognize the Honorable Niehaus.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members, and fellow South Africans. I rise to speak with burning resolve to confront a grave and insidious danger to our democracy. The racist, exclusivist white enclaves of Orania, Kleinfonten, Eureka, and countless other aberrations festering across South Africa. These are not mere settlements. They are deliberate, hateful strongholds of racial segregation, meticulously designed to fracture our nation, sabotage non-racialism, and shred the fragile threads of social cohesion. As the economic freedom fighters, we declare with unyielding conviction that these enclaves are a mortal threat to the very soul of our nation and to nation building. They must be eradicated, their architects prosecuted, and their toxic ideology banished forever. There is no place for racism in South Africa. Not now, not ever. These enclaves strike at the heart of our vision for a united, non-racial South Africa. They are a direct assault on the dream forged in the blood and sacrifice of our liberation heroes. A dream of a nation where all citizens, regardless of race, build a shared future. Orania, Kleinfonten, and their kind reject this vision outright. They enforce policies that bar Black South Africans from living or even setting foot in their spaces, creating islands of white supremacy that mock our constitution and unravel the fabric of our society. This is not a passive choice. It is an active, calculated attack on nation building. A deliberate attempt to entrench racial division and undermine the social cohesion we have all fought so hard to nurture. Let me share a personal encounter that exposed this vile intent. I once asked the late Professor Karel Boshoff, Orania's founder, if my black wife and children could visit or live there with me. His response was chilling, that black people are not allowed to stay in Orania. This is the essence of these enclaves. Racism so brazen, so unapologetic, so disgusting, that it seeks to tear our nation apart by reviving the horrors of apartheid in our democratic era. Honorable members, these enclaves are not just unconstitutional. They are a dagger aimed at the heart of our democracy. Section 9 of our Constitution prohibits racial discrimination and it enshrines equality. And yet, Orania and Kleinfonten institutionalize exclusion, violating the very principles that bind us as a nation. By their existence, they sow division, they erode trust, and threaten the unity we need to address our shared challenges: poverty, inequality, and injustice. The EFF demands immediate action. Those who establish, sustain, or defend these enclaves must face the full force of the law. The Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act must be enforced. And those guilty of perpetuating these racist policies must face imprisonment. Racism is not a trivial offense. It is a crime that jeopardizes the nation building and social cohesion we hold dear. The government must outlaw these enclaves and compel their integration into a non-racial South Africa. Chairperson, to do otherwise is to betray our constitutional mandate and to surrender to the forces of division. Sommige skuil agter die swak verskoning van kulturele selfbeskikking. Dit is 'n gemeene leuen, 'n skandelike masker vir rassistiese uitsluiting. Kulturele beskerming vereis nie rassige en rasseuitsluiting nie. Ware Afrikaner erfenis of enige erfenis groei in eenheid, nie in slegs blanke vestigings. Die idee van selfbeskikking wat deur hierdie herverpakte apartheid ideologie ontwerp word. Ontwerp om een rede, om een ras bo die ander te verhef en ons nasie se eenheid te verbrok. Orania se afsonderlike geldeenheid, skole en ekonomiese stelsels gaan nie oor kultuur nie. Dit gaan oor die ophoping van voorreg, die vestiging van ongelykheid en die isolering van wit supremasie van Suid-Afrika se gedeelde lot. Hierdie ekonomiese apartheid ondermyn nasiebou, verstik sosiale samehorigheid en vergiftig die bron van nie-rassigheid. Ons in die EFF verwerp dit met minagting. Die huigelary van hierdie enclaves se verdedigers is erglik. Dr. Wynand Boshoff, 'n lid vir die Vryheidsfront Plus en Orania se voorstander, sit in hierdie parlement, 'n baken van nie-rassige demokrasie, terwyl hy 'n gemeenskap verdedig wat op rasseuitsluiting gebou is. Hierdie teenstrydigheid is nie net persoonlik nie. Dit is 'n verraad van ons nasie se eenheid. Hoe durf hy of enige iemand anders aanspraak maak daarop? om 'n diverse Suid-Afrika te dien, terwyl hy enclaves verdedig wat ons verdeel. Sulke dubbelsinnigheid voed wantrou, verswak ons politieke vasberadenheid en bedreig die fundament van ons nasiebou-pogings. Those who claim predominantly black areas justify these enclaves. I say, stop this dishonest deflection. Black communities are shaped by historical dispossession and apartheid spatial engineering, not by policies banning white people. Orania and Kleinfonten, by contrast, enforce explicit racist exclusion. This false equivalence is a ploy to normalize segregation and derail our pursuit of a cohesive, non-racial nation. We will not be fooled. Honorable members, every racist enclave, no matter how small, is a cancer on our nation's body. Allowing Orania, Kleinfonten, or Eureka to persist emboldens discrimination and it normalizes division. Unraveling the unity we need to build a just South Africa. The EFF will not stand for it.
Honorable Niehaus, your time is expired, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, but I understood that I could use as much time as I want and then use the remainder for the conclusion. That was what I was informed.
No, here it's written that you've got 8 minutes and you have 6 minutes to close your debate.
Okay, I will use the rest of my input together with what has been said in the concluding part. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
All right, thank you, Honorable Member. I will now recognize Honorable Khabo.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Members, and fellow South Africans. Today's debate addresses not merely the existence of a geographical enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten, but what these settlements fundamentally represent: a direct challenge to the post-1994 democratic dispensation that millions fought for and many died for. These enclaves were deliberately established during the South Africa's transition from apartheid. Orania was established in 1991 and Kleinfonten in the mid-90s, with the explicit goal of creating a stronghold for Afrikaner culture, language, and identity separated from the rest of South Africa. While their defenders frame them as a cultural preservation project, we must recognize them for what they truly are, not only as a manifestation of resistance to our constitutional commitment to building a united non-racial South Africa, but as a group of white minority that still suffers from apartheid hangover. They still believe that white people are superior than black people. This is a group that defines itself outside the democratic framework of South Africa. The presence of these enclaves represents the persistence of the right-wing neoliberal forces that seeks to maintain the racist exclusionary legacies of apartheid and separate development. In Orania, that is located in the Northern Cape, entry requirements including Afrikaans or demonstrating fluency in Afrikaans and sharing the community's value. Similarly, Kleinfonten, established the east of Pretoria, emphasizes Afrikaner culture and Christianity as a foundational principle. These settlements are a modern manifestation of apartheid ideology of separate development. They perpetuate the dangerous fiction that South African cannot coexist in a shared space and a shared governance. This is very antithesis of our democratic project. Honorable Speaker and fellow South Africans, the African National Congress is clear that the neoliberal ideology that underpins these enclaves exacerbates historical inequalities. By privatizing spaces and services, those who hold capital overwhelmingly or mostly being white in South Africa due to the apartheid legacies continue to access exclusive benefits denied to the majority. These enclaves, these represent not merely geographical separation, but an economic apartheid continuing under the new norms. The existence of Orania and Kleinfonten poses a threat or a direct threat to the realization of a united, non-racial, democratic, and a prosperous South Africa. But most importantly, its existence, it undermines our commitment to the national democratic revolution, which seeks to dismantle all forms of systematic and structural legacies of colonialism and apartheid. The National Democratic Revolution that is endorsed by the African National Congress in the Merwe Conference in 1969 commits to the correcting historical injustice by transforming existing economic and social relations. Yet these separatist enclaves actively resist such transformation. They stand as a monument to division rather than unity, exclusion rather than inclusion. As most revolutionaries have rightfully argued, such socio-political models stand in a direct opposition to the constitutional principles of equality, inclusivity, and non-racialism. That are the fundamental, or that is the cornerstone of our democratic values. The involvement of ethnic division at a time when our nation most needs this unity. The ANC has consistently taken a principled stance against all forms of division, whether manifested as xenophobia, sexism, tribalism, or homophobia. Our commitment to the National Democratic Revolution demands consistency in opposing all forms of discrimination and division. These divisive ideologies reproduce the very same structures that enables places like Orania and Kleinfonten to exist. Our vision, as articulated in the National Development Plan, is for South Africa where everybody feels free, bound to each other, where we embrace our African identity while recognizing our multiculturalism as a defining element of our national identity. This vision is incompatible with enclaves that deliberately excludes the majority of South Africans based not on ethnicity and race. Honorable members and fellow South Africans, we must equally condemn the Democratic Alliance push for greater autonomy of Western Cape, which employs the very same socio-economic and political exclusionary logic as Orania and Kleinfonten. The Provincial Powers Bill, initially proposed by John Steenhuisen, the very same Steenhuisen, whom we are still struggling to locate his metric results, seeks for greater autonomy in functions such as policing, port management, electricity generation, and trade. Western Cape Premier Alan Wind has explicitly stated that the bill will give province a scope to push boundaries even further. This language of pushing boundaries resonates dangerously with the separatist ambitions of Orania and Kleinfonten. And such a view or an ambition must not only be rejected, but be vehemently opposed. The ANC does not support the recognition of the independence of Orania and Kleinfonten or their so-called right of self-determination. We must maintain this position. We have maintained this position consistently since 1994, including during the formation of government of national unity. Many have tried to suggest that the ANC has agreed to the Freedom Front Plus demands to recognize Orania's independence. They were firmly denied by our national spokesperson. The ANC has always exposed, has always rejected, has always refused to come to the party of accepting Orania as an independent state. Even if such demands were there, the ANC would have not agreed because of such views or such demands are standing counterposed to what we seek to achieve, of which is a unitary state as the African National Congress. Despite these challenges, we must reflect on the significant strides made by the ANC-led government in building South Africa reflective of our national democratic character. The establishment of Chapter 9 institutions, including the Public Protector, the South African Human Rights Commission, and the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of Rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities, has strengthened our constitutional democracy. We have redefined our national identity through symbols like our flag, which was designed to incorporate both flags and colors of the ANC flag, symbolizing reconciliation. Our commitment to multi-party democracy remains unwavering even when we confront those who seek to undermine it. We call upon South Africans to defend our country's democratic gains and to work towards the realization of the vision of the Freedom Charter in building a South Africa that belongs to those who live in black and white. Enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten represent not merely democratic anomalies, but ideological challenges to our constitutional order. They embody a resistance to the transformation that we cannot afford to normalize or accept. They reproduce apartheid logic and separation at a time when our national project demands integration and unity. The battle for a true non-racial South African, let us recommit ourselves to building a nation where, in the words of the National Development Plan, we create a home where everybody feels free, yet bounded to each other. This is South Africa we fought for, and this is South Africa we must continue building together. And we must also explain that we are vehemently opposing or rejecting any idea that seeks to create an impression that the ANC is coming to the party in terms of recognizing Orania as an independent state. We're not only rejecting it, but we are standing counterposed to it. We're not only standing counterposed to it, but we are equally saying this will be a betrayal to our heroes and heroines who have came before us and fought for this democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Khabo. Honorable members, Honorable Khabo, you had a very, very bad sound on your background. But when we continue, please, Honorable members, can you find a place where there's no noise so that we can also listen clearly to the speeches that we are presenting today? Let's move on. I will now give Honorable Ngumalo.
Honorable Speaker, lona izwe labantu abazo elingoqhiphowe ababhedla ubandlululo. The people of this country did not wage a bitter and a protracted struggle, shed blood, and bury their children so that 3 decades after 1994 we would witness the resurgence of apartheid in new and sophisticated clothing. Orania and Kleinfonten are not innocent cultural settlements. They are fortified symbols of white supremacy, racism, and secessionist of cultural preservation. The MK party, both in parliament and the Gauteng provincial legislature, has taken active steps to confront this festering wound. In November last year, we invoked Rule 130 in the Gauteng legislature to challenge the premier on the legality of Kleinfonten. We asked hard questions, we tabled uncomfortable truths. And what did we get in response? Nothing. Not every courtesy of empty platitudes, not even the courtesy of empty platitudes, silence. And in that silence, the ANC and the DA revealed their complicity. Honorable Speaker, in the past few weeks, the chief whip of the MK party conducted a fact-finding mission to Kleinfonten. What we found was not a celebration of culture, but a brutal continuation of racial exclusion. This is a place where no African may live, no African child may learn, and no African may belong. This is not a community. This is a time capsule of apartheid. We must remind this House that a court of law has declared Kleinfonten unlawful, but despite this, no red ants have been dispatched. No bulldozers have been deployed. No demolition orders enforced. Smangaless. We ask, had it been a settlement of landless Africans on the outskirts of Pretoria, would the response have been the same? Would the ANC-led municipality and DA's liberal ruthless efficiency? We all know the answer. The state would descend like a hammer, as it always does, on the poor and the dispossessed. Honorable members, these racially exclusive enclaves are not harmless cultural oddities. They are strategic threats to the constitutional order. They violate both the spirit and the letter of the Constitution. They undermine the nation building, spit in the face of non-racialism, and make a mockery of social cohesion. Their very existence says to the majority of this country, you are not welcome. Your dignity is not recognized. Your freedom is conditional. The MK party does not approach this matter as populist. We approach it as disciplined revolutionaries who use the same imperfect constitution to weed out racism. As a government in waiting, we prior to matured and lawful confrontation, members bill to amend Section 235 of the Constitution to ensure that it can never again be misused as a shield for racism. This section, which was meant to protect the cultures of all communities, cannot be weaponized the exclusion of Africans. Section 1 of the Constitution of our Constitution enshrines human dignity, non-racialism, and equality. Section 9 of the Bill of Rights guarantees that everyone is equal before the law, and of Kleinfonten violates these values. It is not a culture that is apartheid, not African's culture. We also take this opportunity to firmly reject and condemn the Cape Exit initiative, which seeks to fracture the Republic of South Africa by manufacturing a white-dominated breakaway state. This is Orania on steroids, a dangerous and regressive fantasy being dressed up as self-determination. Cape Exit is not about freedom of federalism. It is about escaping the democratic will of the African majority. It is about preserving colonial power structure under a new flag. The MK party will not tolerate any attempt to balkanize this country. The unity of South Africa is non-negotiable. The ANC and the DA must answer to history. They must explain why they allow these enclaves to flourish under their watch. They must account for their paralysis, and they must know that the MK party will not rest until these racist remnants of colonial and apartheid rule are uprooted. The MK party is a government in waiting. That must be very clear. We are the custodian of the future where no community is allowed to assert superiority over another, where no land is reserved for one race, and where nationhood is built on justice, not concession. We'll continue to use every legislative tool, every oversight mechanism, and every street corner to wage war against this treasonous regression. When the MK party takes over, we will abolish Orania, Eureka, and Kleinfonten. We'll go further in uniting South Africa. We'll dissolve the 9 provinces into 4. We will extinguish the racist thought of Cape Exit. In conclusion, we support this debate by the EFF, and we say to the defenders of Kleinfonten and Cape Town Exit, your time is up. The land you hold will be reclaimed, and your walls you build, and the walls you build will fall. And all shall be equal substantively. There shall be no preservation of white privileges. Asizukuzwa ngabo izwe lethu sonke lela sizukuzwa ngabafana baweminye imizi. Kwaza mkhonto, kwaza. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Numalo. We'll now move to the next speaker, which is Honorable Engelbrecht.
Honorable House Chair, let me begin by stating unequivocally the Democratic Alliance is committed to building a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it, united in its diversity and rooted in the value of freedom, fairness, and opportunity. Our vision is of a non-racial, inclusive, and prosperous South Africa, one in which each individual has the right and opportunity to determine their own destiny within the framework of a shared national identity and constitutional order. It's against this backdrop that we must consider the existence and character of enclaves like Orania in the Northern Cape and Kleinfonten on the outskirts of Pretoria. These communities, predominantly Afrikaner and self-managed, have drawn both national and international attention for their cultural homogeneity and perceived separateness from the broader South African society. And while it is true that not all South Africans, and most certainly not all Afrikaners, support the ideological approach taken by the residents of these communities, we must uphold a key value of our constitutional democracy, the right of individuals and communities to freedom of association, cultural expression, and self-determination, as long as these are pursued within the bounds of the law and the Constitution. Let us recall the historic and constitutional context in which these communities were formed. Orania was formed in 1991, just prior to South Africa's democratic transition, while Kleinfontein was formalized in the early 1990s. Both communities emerged from a desire amongst a small segment of the Afrikaner population to preserve language, culture, and a sense of identity, particularly amid perceived fears of marginalization and the loss of political power during the transition to democracy. With the advent of the 1996 Constitution and later, the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act in 2000, the rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities were entrenched. Section 31 of the Constitution provides that persons belonging to such communities may not be denied the right to enjoy their culture, practice their religion, or use their language. More notably, Section 235 of the Constitution provides for the right of self-determination of communities sharing a common culture and language heritage within a framework of national unity. Even the African National Congress, when the leaders of MK and EFF were members of that party in the Constitutional Assembly, accepted that a framework for cultural self-determination must be part of our democratic settlement, acknowledging that cultural minorities would need space to preserve their heritage in a democratic, inclusive South Africa. However, House Chair, this must never be distorted into a mechanism for division or exclusion. It is not a license to recreate the past, nor to establish enclaves that function in contradiction to the spirit of non-racialism and national cohesion. The key concern with communities like Orania and Kleinfontein is not that they exist, it is how they could exist. If communities appear to define themselves not by what they are for, but what they are against, particularly if that means racial or cultural exclusivity, it could send troubling messages in a society still healing from the wounds of apartheid. Indeed, if a community chooses to be homogeneous by cultural or language preference, this should not translate into discriminatory practices that effectively excludes others on the basis of race or ethnicity. It is one thing to preserve a language or a tradition. It is quite another to foster a culture of isolation, suspicion, or superiority. Let us be clear. Self-determination can never become a veil for segregation. And in this regard, it is important to emphasize that these enclaves, no matter how self-sufficient they may seek to be, do not and cannot exist in isolation from the broader South African society. They rely on the national infrastructure, on economic integration, on trade, on governance structures, and the rule of law. Their roads, their electricity grids, their commerce all remain connected to and dependent on the rest of the country. Their people are subject to our laws, our constitution, and our Bill of Rights. And so, while they may project a degree of autonomy, they remain part and parcel of South Africa and its constitutional dispensation united in our diversity. Honourable Speaker, nation building in South Africa cannot and must not be a one-way street. It is the responsibility of each community, each citizen, and each institution to contribute to the building of a shared national identity, one that respects diversity but does not use it as a tool of separation. The DA believes deeply in the concept of diversity as a strength, not as a wall. We support the idea that communities can and should preserve their heritage, their language, and their traditions. But this must be done in a manner that invites engagement, fosters understanding, and builds bridges, not in ways that resurrect old divisions or isolate citizens from the national community. Orania and Kleinfontein must be viewed through this lens. Are they working towards inclusion, openness, and cooperation? Or are they retreating into cultural lagers that resist integration and progress? Are they seeking to preserve heritage or to avoid change? These are not questions of legality. They are questions of values. And as public representatives, we must speak clearly and honestly about the choices communities make in the exercise of their rights. Because the freedom enshrined in our Constitution comes with responsibilities to one another, to our democracy, and to the future we are all trying to build together. Let me end with this. South Africa's story is still being written. We cannot afford to splinter into islands of suspicion and isolation. We need communities to embrace their unique identities while participating fully in our shared national journey. We must be vigilant in protecting the constitutional rights of all citizens, including those who choose to live in Orania or Kleinfontein, but we must also stand firm in our conviction that no community is above the values of non-racialism, unity and nationhood. Honourable House Chair, we cannot build a nation if we fragment into enclaves, each pulling away from the other. The strength of South Africa lies in its diversity in unity, not diversity in isolation. Let us build a South Africa where differences is celebrated, not weaponized. Let us encourage cultural preservation, but not cultural separation. Let us honor history, but not hide behind it. Let us respect the rights of all, but never at the expense of national unity, shared prosperity and justice. Where identity is preserved, but not policed, and where the ultimate loyalty of every citizen lies not in the fences that separate us, but in the Constitution that unites us. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now move to Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The IFP rises today to express our deep concern over the persistence and quiet expansion of racial and cultural enclaves, such as Orania and Kleinfonten in a democratic South Africa. These spaces founded and maintained with the explicit purpose of cultural exclusivity, most often under the guise of preserving Afrikaner heritage, stand in direct contradiction to the constitutional values of non-racialism, equality and unity. Let us be clear, South Africa's democratic transition was never about erasing culture or language. On the contrary, our constitution protects and affirms the right of every community to freely practice its culture, language, and religion. However, when those cultural rights are used as justification to create racially homogeneous towns, where integration is discouraged and historical privilege is preserved through isolation, then we must sound the alarm. The IFP is a party founded on the principle of Ubuntu, that I am because you are. Our founder, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, stood firmly for a South Africa built on mutual respect, coexistence, and social justice. We believe in unity within diversity, not uniformity nor the resurgence of apartheid spatial planning dressed in constitutional language. These enclaves do not only threaten nation building, they distort it. They reassert the privileges of a few while deepening the alienating of the majority. They reinforce the myth that peace and progress can only be sustained through separation. That is not the South Africa we fought for. Moreover, in a country still battling the legacies of segregation, land dispossession, and systemic exclusion, the continued tolerance of racially exclusive settlements undermines the very essence of our reconciliation project. The role of the state must be proactive in addressing these pockets of separatism. It cannot be that under the banner of democracy, exclusionary spaces are allowed to thrive unchecked while the rest of the country battles with inequality, poverty, and underdevelopment. Where laws and policies are being used to evade integration or frustrate transformation, Parliament must act decisively. As elected representatives of the people, our duty is to ensure that freedom in South Africa is not fractured along racial, cultural, or economic lines. The IFP calls on this House to reaffirm the spirit of our constitution by ensuring that no community in South Africa operates above the national commitment to unity, non-racialism, and equal citizenship. The rights of cultural minorities must be protected, but not at the expense of nation cohesion. Let us build bridges, not borders. Let us promote integration, not isolation. For South Africa to truly heal and prosper, we must dismantle not only the laws of the past, but the walls, both physical and ideological, that still divide us. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now move, I will recognize Honorable Sauls.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Moinke Ahuniki. In 2009, as the then ANC Youth League president, Honorable Malema visited Orania as part of his election campaign, and he is reported to have concluded, open quote, "We thought well-armed Afrikaners would stop the blacks," close quote, but they were warmly welcomed. My political mentor and party president, His Excellency Gayton McKenzie, didn't just pass by Orania, he slept over. He too found them to be very friendly and also celebrated them for the town being very clean, no load shedding, and the massive infrastructure development. However, because he has one skill that no other politician in this country have, a unique skill that South Africa desperately needs right now, a skill that can only be acquired from a past life in maximum prison. You can't corn an ex-corn. He exposed the deception behind them, not saying directly that they don't want non-white people to reside there, but the rules to become part of the town is so difficult that no non-white will ever be successful to stay there. So we agree, enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten in post-apartheid South Africa is a threat to nation building, non-racialism, and social cohesion. However, we also note with concern the striking similarities between the EFF and enclaves like Orania. They have leaders with racist and separatist ideological views. The EFF's entire organizational ideology is based on an atheist white man, Karl Marx's thinking, who is historically known to have racist views. Orania and Kleinfonten only prefers the Afrikaans part of the national anthem, and the EFF only prefers the Nguni part of our national anthem. Orania and Kleinfonten calls for an Afrikaner separatist identity, whilst EFF chants Kill the Boer to promote a black separate identity. Therefore, South Africans should view EFF and enclaves like Orania as a threat to nation building, non-racialism, and social cohesion. Majority South Africans desires to live as one nation under God. By divine appointment, the PA president is the minister tasked with the responsibility of social cohesion to bring white Africans, black Africans, colored Africans, and Indian Africans together as one nation under God. Rightfully so, because as a colored man, racial integration is not just an ideology to him, but a matter of biology. In him is every race, therefore he can't look down on any race. Organizations like the EFF and enclaves like Orania claims to be owners of the land, but it is my forefathers as the First Nation, Khoi and San people, who are the real owners. And as the real owners, we say that white, black, Indian, and colored Africans in particular must all share in the land. We encourage EFF, Orania, and Kleinfonten to join hands with the rest of South Africans who seek to build and not destroy our country. It's time for all patriotic South Africans to form part of a strong alliance to build a better South Africa for all who lives in it. Te itara te. Eyo. Salute. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable. We will now, yes.
Chair, I would have wanted to intervene. The previous speaker said white writers like Karl Marx are racist. If this is possible, would have wanted him to clarify further.
No, that's not a point of order, Honorable Member, but we'll listen to Hansard and then come back. let us then move to the next speaker, which is Honorable Mulder.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, it's unfortunate that Mr. Malema, who asked for this debate, is not participating. The subject for today's debate was chosen by the leader of the EFF, Mr. Malema, claiming that communities like Orania and Kleinfonten are a threat to nation-building, non-racialism and social cohesion. These communities did not originate overnight. They are the products of a long negotiating process between responsible leaders. These negotiations led to the signing of an accord on Afrikaner self-determination on the 23rd of April 1994. That accord is just as relevant today than it was then. Today we have section 31 in our constitution dealing with the cultural, religious and linguistic communities. Persons belonging to these communities may not be denied the right with members of that community to enjoy their culture, practice their religion and use their language. Section 235 of the Constitution deals with self-determination and clearly recognizes the right of any community sharing a common cultural language heritage within a territorial entity in the Republic or in any other way. This is exactly what Orania and Kleinfonten is doing. Self-reliant, productive, sustainable communities that places no financial burden on the state. The subject of this debate claims that Orania and Kleinfonten are a threat to nation building, non-racialism and social cohesion. But is that true? Who is the real threat to nation building? A political party that sows dissent, that intimidates people, that practices division and longs for a revolution in South Africa, the EFF is that threat. Who is the real threat to non-racialism? A political party who wants to cut the throat of whiteness and who wants to confiscate the property of whites. A party that says that they might someday call for the slaughtering of white people in South Africa, but not yet. Once again, that is the EFF. Who is the threat to social cohesion? A political party whose leader says, you must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that there must be killing as a revolutionary act, and who loves to sing, kill the boer, kill the farmer. Clearly, once again, the EFF is the threat to social cohesion. Orania and Kleinfonten is no threat. We all know who the threat is. Waarom laat hierdie debat my vreeslik baie dink aan 1 Konings 3, waar Salomo moes uitspraak gee tussen die twee vrouens. Die een vrou wie se babietjie dood is, en een se babietjie wat leef. En een wat dood is, sê sny middeldeur. Die inwoners van Orania en Kleinfonten is Afrikaners. En net soos die meer as 2,5 miljoen ander Afrikaners wat elders in Suid-Afrika woon. Ons het onsself na ons kontinent vernoem, Afrikaners in Afrika. Ons mooiste taal is Afrikaans. Ons vernoem het dit ook na ons kontinent Afrika. Dit is die taal wat ons met trots ons kinders leer. Afrikaners is bouers. Ons is nie brekers nie. Ons wil en gaan graag op 'n positiewe en konstruktiewe manier in vrede met alle ander mense in Suid-Afrika 'n pad vorentoe loop. Ons is verbind aan Afrika en ons gaan hier 'n toekoms vir ons en ons kinders skep. Baie duidelik uit vandag se debat is daar 'n groot klomp onduidelikheid en onsekerheid en misverstande oor wie Orania regtig is, oor wie Kleinfonten regtig is en waarvoor hulle regtig staan. Maar meneer Malema en die EFF moet mooi hoor en hulle moet mooi weet en glo en dit onthou. Orania en Kleinfonten en alle ander Afrikaners is hier om te bly. Ons gaan nêrens en ons het nie julle toestemming daarvoor nodig nie. Baie dankie.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now move to, would now recognize Honorable Ngobeni.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair and colleagues. Enclaves of apartheid are proof that HF Verwoerd is alive and well in post-apartheid South Africa. I stand today to crack the veneer of comfort, disrupt the silence of complicity, and call this country to conscience, to expose the rot in our democratic foundations, to declare without fear or favor that Orania and Kleinfonten are not cultural enclaves. They are ideological fault lines, betrayal of our democratic promise dressed up as heritage. Let us not pretend otherwise. These places are not built to preserve culture, but to preserve exclusion. They are sanctuaries of apartheid nostalgia built on the bones of a brutal past, but camouflaged as self-determination. Action SA unequivocally rejects this racial exceptionalism. The repeated dishonest misreading of Section 31 of our Constitution to justify these enclaves is not only wrong, but dangerous. That section protects cultural expression, not the construction of modern-day Bantustans for those who cannot let go of apartheid. They are calculated betrayals of our shared future. They threaten nation building, block social cohesion, and corrode democracy. Behind those fences, children are not only learning culture and religion, they are being taught to fear the other, to internalize superiority, and to live apart rather than together. But honorable members, this is not just about Orania and Kleinfonten. The same ideology thrives here in this house, in parties that pretend to be liberal or revolutionary while preaching division, inciting hate, and refusing to take responsibility for the fires they fan in our society. You cannot claim to love this country while setting it alight with reckless rhetoric. You cannot provoke chaos and still call yourself a true servant leader of the people. So how did we get here? Why does apartheid still have postal codes? Let us call a spade a spade. The ANC must take full responsibility. For 30 years, this government has spoken of transformation while building nothing. Instead of dismantling apartheid's legacy, the ANC preserved it through corruption, patronage, and catastrophic governance. Their failure to deliver justice, dignity, and opportunity fertilized the ground for enclaves like Orania to rise. They failed to build an inclusive state so that others can justify building their own. While millions of Black and colored South Africans in particular remain trapped in poverty without water, jobs, electricity, or safety, the idolizers of Verwoerd flourish untouched and unbothered. Across the continent, young Africans are standing tall, like President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso or the recently elected Duma Boko of Botswana, boldly reclaiming sovereignty and restoring national pride. And here we are, marveling at them while accepting mediocrity at home instead of prioritizing people over party within our democratic framework. Why are we in awe of what others are achieving when we too have the power, if only we dared to expect better, demand more, and build differently? If we are proud to be African and South Africans in particular, why do we tolerate fear, division, and hate? We cannot build a united South Africa while tolerating enclaves of racial exclusion. We cannot preach non-racialism while entertaining apartheid ideology. Action SA rejects the cowardice of cultural excuses and the criminal misuse of our constitution. These communities are not harmless. They are breeding grounds for division and a slap in the face of every South African who believed in a future of inclusion. We believe in a real unified nation built on truth, justice, and shared prosperity. It is time to once and for all reject the comfort of lies and bury Verwoerd in memory, law, policy, and practice. I thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now move to UDM. There is no name that has been allocated here. So UDM, is there anyone? UDM. Okay, we move. Rise. There's no name as well. Rise. Okay, we move. ATM. ATM. I will now recognize Honorable Kihakilwe.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, as the African National Congress, we continue to struggle against the remnants of colonial and apartheid special planning, and we oppose the existence of Orania, a white-only Afrikaner enclave that perpetuates exclusionary apartheid policies in our country. We of the African National Congress are engaged in a struggle to realize a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous society. The continued existence of Orania as a remnant of apartheid legacy has to be fought against within the constitutional provisions of our country. Our commitment lies in promoting spatial justice and eliminating the lingering effects of apartheid. Spatial design by building integrated, spatial just, and sustainable human settlement, as well as creating new smart cities. Honorable Chairperson, colonialism and apartheid are systems of domination and control of one people by the other, of Black people by white people in the context of our country. In practice, it is a system that humanizes one section of the population, white people, while dehumanizes the other, mostly Black people. In our country, the colonial apartheid system is clearly expressed through process of spatial separation, which manifests as segregation in colonial cities and as method of demarcating the city from the countryside via colonial administration by the promulgation of the Group Areas Act in 1950. Honorable members, the Group Areas Act has a far-reaching dehumanizing impact as it compartmentalizes our urban geography, for example, cities and towns, by appropriating and transforming these spaces into white-only enclaves, which are privileged and have all the necessary social, economic, educational, and recreational facilities, while the Black-only enclaves are township with no space. People are piled on top of the other, and the shacks are squeezed tightly together. Therefore, the establishment of Orania and Kleinfonten should be understood as the perpetuation of the logic of colonialism and racism, which is entrenched within certain sections of our society, especially the Afrikaners. Honorable Chairperson, as members of this esteemed House, we should reject and condemn those who promote the false and historically inaccurate narrative suggesting that colonialism and apartheid provided better service delivery, infrastructure, job opportunities, and quality of life compared to our current democratic system. The better life they are referring to was for a tiny white minority, which was made possible by subjudication and sub-exploitation of Black majority, which lived under the extreme poverty, landlessness, super exploitation in the workplace, racism, and limited access to education and healthcare services. The continued existence of such enclaves not only perpetuates the fallacy that is the white people's God-given right to be the superior race, but also poses a great threat to nation building, non-racialism, and social cohesion in our country. The continued existence of this enclaves contradicts our commitment as the African National Congress to the National Democratic Revolution, which is an ongoing revolutionary process aimed at abolishing all remnants of apartheid spatial patterns. The National Democratic Revolution requires us to implement policies and programs such as building integrated, spatial just, and sustainable human settlement to foster nation building, national unity, and social cohesion. The August House has the legislative power to radically transform those white enclaves, and we dare not fail our forebears who conceived the Freedom Charter when they said that in a democratic dispensation, all people will have the right to live where they choose, be decently housed, and have fenced location, and ghettos must be abolished. Honorable Chairperson, since 1994, the African National Congress-led democratic state has made significant strides towards dismantling the special legacy of colonialism and apartheid through the implementation of integrated and special just human settlement programs such as reconstruction and development program, housing projects, the social and affordable housing schemes, and the provision of serviced residential sites are among other interventions. The ANC-led government has also implemented mega housing projects such as the Flu-Off project, which seeks to address Soweto's housing needs in an integrated residential, and business community while reversing its apartheid-era spatial planning by integrating Soweto with the neighborhood town of Roodepoort, historically populated by white residents. Our ANC-led government has also promulgated progressive and transformative legislation, including the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act and the Integrated Urban Development Framework as legal instruments to address spatial injustice and promote equitable housing developments, creating integrated, democratic, spatial, just, and sustainable human settlement in post-apartheid cities. Honorable Chair, as much as these white racists living in the whites-only enclaves such as Orania and Kleinfonten believe that they are independent and self-sustaining, this is far from the truth. The truth is that they are within our borders and benefit from the country's mineral resources, public infrastructure, national security, and stability. As this August House, we need to pay particular attention to Orania as it has become a national security threat because recently some of its leaders have visited the US seeking recognition as an autonomous entity within the borders of our country, knowing the military interest of the United States in seeking to build a military presence in the Southern African region. We must move with speed to dismantle this colonial enclave. Honorable Chairperson, equally we have an urgent responsibility to pay particular attention to the new apartheid city of Cape Town, which continues to perpetuate apartheid spatial legacy of exclusion through the property market, where working class and poor people are deliberately excluded from access to housing in the city center, in high rental accommodation and the expensive housing market, which push them to the uninhabitable black hole.
Can you please hold? I think there is a point of order. Honorable Matthias.
Thank you, Chairperson. I was wanting to ask whether the honourable member will take a question about the ANC's role in allowing the Orania and other racist
only
matters.
saying you are honourable member. Only say only requesting if a member will take a question. You can't argue.
Oh, I can't ask whether the ANC was responsible for allowing Orania
honourable
to
member, we are not
flourish.
allowed to do that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair, for the direction. I thought we allowed
Honourable
that we could just direct it.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Can you take a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The Western Cape under the Democratic Alliance continues to prioritize white suburb at the expense of townships. You can go to the Mitchell's Plain or Guguletu, where the black majority resides, and you will see that the so-called mother city is not a mother to all her residents, only to the filthy rich who are mostly white. As the African National Congress in this August House, we call on the democratic government to strengthen the existing legislation and policies to enforce spatial justice to address the modern forms of racial and class-based spatial injustice. And this is possible as demonstrated by the Department of Housing's Human Settlement, acquiring buildings that are strategically located to provide affordable rental and social housing for the working class. Honorable members, we of the African National Congress welcome and appreciate the progressive judgment by the Pretoria High Court of last August, wherein it declared that Kleinfonten was an illegal settlement which was entrenching racial exclusivity and discriminatory practices, and ordered that the city of Tshwane should enforce the country's laws regarding spatial planning and building regulations. As a nation, we must never tolerate racists who disguise themselves as groups seeking to preserve their culture and languages. The post-apartheid democratic South Africa is founded on the principles of non-racial, non-sexism, freedom, and democracy. Many of our people died for the creation of this democratic dispensation. Therefore, we have an important responsibility to advance spatial justice and continue with the struggle to dismantle remnants of apartheid spatial design. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now move to Al-Jama. Al-Jama. Okay. NCC. NCC. PAC. PAC. UAT. UAT. Good.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Any member from Good?
Chairperson. Can you hear me, Chairperson? Chairperson, can you hear me?
Is it you, Honorable Mahlatsi?
Yes, UAT.
Okay, yes, I had called you.
Am I audible?
Respond. Yes, you are audible. You can continue, Honorable Member.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Khotsom Africa. The post-apartheid South Africa was built on a promise of non-racial, inclusive, and united nation. Yet 3 decades later, racial inclusive enclaves such as Orania and Kleinfonten persist, functioning as a partial and ideological remnants of apartheid. Their continued existence poses a direct threat to nation building, social cohesion, and constitutional value of dignity and equality. From Pan-African perspective, such enclaves represent the betrayal of the broader African struggle for liberation, unity, and decolonization. Nation building in South Africa is predicted on a healing historical division and fostering shared identity among diverse population. Enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten reject national integration by asserting ethnic and racial separation. These communities exclude Black South Africans and non-Afrikaners under the pretext of culture preservation, thereby reinforcing the Eastern nationalist fragmentation of exclusive citizens. As the African Union champion continental integrate the social justice, such separation model with the democratic state contradict the very ethos of Pan-Africanism. The South African Constitution enshrines non-racialism as a founding principle, yet Orania and Kleinfonten are explicitly racial exclusive, welcoming only white Afrikaners under guise of cultural autonomy. This enclave institutionalized racial boundaries and perpetuate apartheid logic into a post-apartheid era. Their very existence legitimizes a form of soft apartheid, where racial separation is cloaked in a legality but violates the spirit of liberation and equality. Pan-Africanism opposes all forms of racial domination and exclusive. Such enclaves undermine efforts to build a South Africa and indeed an Africa free of racial hierarchies. Social cohesion involved trust, mutual understanding, and cooperation across different communities. Enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten cultivate inward-looking ideology, foster suspicious of national institutions, and operate semi-autonomously. Their self-governance model, private education system, economic insulation contribute to social detachment and reinforce racial polarization. These communities do not merely isolate themselves, they send a symbol message that cohabitation in diversity is not only undesirable but avoidable, thereby weakening the national fabric.
Honorable Mahlatsi, unfortunately, your time has expired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, these are party discussions, and as maybe you would see even on your speakers list that included good and PAC, but we'll not call on good now. We'll go straight to the member of the DA, Honorable Nana, and you have 8 minutes because Honorable Engelbert saved 1 minute, so it was added to your 7 minutes. You have 8 minutes and you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning, honorable members, and thanks for the 1 minute. Honorable members, today we gather to discuss an issue that sits at the intersection of constitutional freedom and national unity. A conversation about communities such as Orania and Kleinfonten in a democratic South Africa. We're challenged to ask whether these communities are exercising their constitutional freedoms as enshrined in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which is the Bill of Rights, or they are undermining the greater goal of nation building, non-racialism, and social cohesion. So let us begin with what is beyond dispute here. As honorable members have said before me, our Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It enshrines and guarantees the freedom of choice, association, cultural expression, and the right to self-determination. These are not just abstract ideals, honorable members. They are hard-won rights of a nation that emerged from a dark past of racial divisions and oppression, and the scars are still showing. Communities of Orania and Kleinfonten argue that they are preserving their cultural identity, language, and way of life. And in a constitutional democracy, we must defend their right to do so, just as fiercely as we would defend the rights of any other person who choose to live freely, peacefully in a diverse society. The Democratic Alliance believes firmly that South Africa, being a multicultural, multi-ethnical society, is our greatest strength. And 99.9% of South Africans choose to live in such a diverse society. Let us be clear. This is not a call to erase culture, to homogenize, or to silence identity. On the contrary, our Constitution celebrates diversity. But unity in diversity cannot be achieved, honorable members, through isolation. It is forged through dialogue, participation, and shared experience. We live in a world that is more connected than ever before. A world where different cultures, races, religions, genders, and backgrounds intersect on a daily basis. And yet we are still learning how to truly live as a diverse and inclusive society. This is not just a noble ideal, but an urgent necessity. Diversity is not just about numbers or representation. It is about recognizing and celebrating the vast range of human experiences and identities that shape our communities. It means honoring the differences that make each one of us unique, where those differences lie in our ethnicity, beliefs, abilities, sexual orientation, or life experiences. Inclusion goes one step further. It means creating a space where everybody feels valued, heard, and empowered to thrive. It means making sure no one is left behind, no matter how different they may be from the majority. True inclusion turns diversity into strength. When we embrace diversity and inclusion, we build stronger societies. Research shows that diverse teams are more creative, more effective at problem solving, and more resilient. And our beloved Springbok rugby team is a living testament. Communities that embrace differences, united in that diversity, are safer, more just, and more peaceful. But beyond the data, there is a deeper truth. In all modern societies, every person deserves dignity, respect, and and the freedom to be themselves, embrace their culture, and use their language without fear. It is critically imperative to recognize that inclusion cannot be achieved with lip service. It takes hard work to realize. This means we must learn to listen more than talking. This means we must learn to challenge our biases. This means being able to be grown up. It also means standing up against discrimination in all its forms, whether it's racism, sexism, tribalism, or any other barrier that divides us. The Democratic Alliance stands ready to continue in nation building, believing in freedom, fairness, opportunity, and diversity. Let us build institutions that reflect the diversity of the people they serve. And let us lead by example by treating each other with kindness and openness every single day. In a truly inclusive society, everyone has a seat at the dinner table and everyone's voice matters. So today and every day, let us commit to creating neighborhoods, a South Africa, and the world where our differences are not just accepted but celebrated. Because when we include everyone, we all rise together. Honorable Nomalo, maybe let me remind you, your obsession with the DA, you keep on throwing the good name of our party into this thing. Let me remind you, it is your cult leader, Mfowethu, Ubaba, who was part of the negotiating team of the ANC that agreed to this settlement. So don't throw the DA into this thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now move. I will recognize Honorable Maimela.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, Honorable members. Today we painfully confront a matter that strikes at the heart of our democratic project and the values enshrined in our constitution, such as nation building, non-racialism, and social cohesion. The existence and persistence of racial enclaves such as Orania and Kleinfonten represent a direct contradiction to the ideals of a united, non-racial and inclusive South Africa that so many fought and died for. These self-segregated communities rooted in apartheid-era ideology undermine our collective efforts to build a society founded on equality, mutual respect, and shared destiny. They are not merely cultural preservation projects, as often claimed, but symbols of resistance to transformation and reconciliation. As a nation, we must confront the uncomfortable truth that such enclaves pose a serious threat to the progress we have made since 1994, and they must be critically examined for what they truly represent: barriers to unity and relics of division. The African National Congress has always aimed to transform society with the ultimate goal of building a new nation devoid of colonial and apartheid social divisions. This vision is captured in both the African Claims and Freedom Charter documents, which advocate for a new collective South African identity, an identity which will be anchored by inclusion and rejecting the idea of majority or minority groups in the country. The late intellectual activist Steve Biko was unequivocal about creating a society united around foundational political values such as non-racialism, non-tribalism, and non-sexism. He expressed this well by saying that the aim is to create a universal humanity that would not be based on oppressive racialized social divisions. Consequently, a post-apartheid South Africa cannot organize society on the basis of minority or minority rights. We should be building a united nation that does not reproduce apartheid segregation or special development patterns. Chairperson, the continued existence and deliberate preservation of racially exclusive enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten in a democratic South Africa stands in direct contradiction to the ideas of the Freedom Charter the Freedom Charter's enduring promise that the doors of learning and culture shall be open to all. These enclaves are not innocent cultural experiments, but a strategic fortress of exclusion that weaponize education, language, and heritage to fortify a vision of white separatism. The African National Congress unequivocally condemns these bastions of apartheid nostalgia. They undermine nation building, reject the principle of non-racialism, and actively obstruct social cohesion. Education, as we declared in the struggle, is a weapon of liberation. Yet in these spaces, it is wielded as a tool of isolation and privilege. We must decisively dismantle the systematic protections and legal loopholes that allow such enclaves to thrive. If we are serious about forging a united, democratic, and inclusive South Africa, then no space, geographical or ideological, should be immune from the transformative values of equality, integration, and justice. Honorable Chair, the Soweto government in waiting, which is riddled with confusion on whether they recognize the Constitution as a supreme law, in the same breath, they base their argument on the very same Constitution they don't recognize, exposes their obsession with the ANC in this debate. Even prior their existence as a party, the ANC has condemned in all platforms any efforts to delay or divert the building of the National Democratic Society, and further, continuously pursued transformative policies. Therefore, Honorable Chair, the narrative that the ANC has been nonchalant on the persistence of these enclaves is a fiction and is in line with the state of mind of this Soweto government in waiting. In the same breath, it is imperative to confront misleading narratives that invert the real power dynamics in our country. Those amongst us in this House who want to thwart transformative policies like the Employment Equity Act and today claim that these communities were founded on fears of marginalization are again peddling white lies. Orania, for example, has made no secret on its intention as a democratically homogeneous African population, excluding other South Africans based solely on race or culture. That is not marginalization. That is voluntary segregation. Fear is often used to justify exclusion, but we must ask, fear of what? Fear of integration, of sharing resources and opportunities in a democratic society? We cannot be party to the confusion of discomfort of giving up historical privilege with the pain of truly being marginalized. Others in this House, Honorable Chair, as former residents of Orania, would want to refer us to a nation to accords only known by themselves. The accord we know in this regard and recognize is the Freedom Charter that rejects racism as the most shallow and narrow ideological orientation which imprisons people to discriminate against other human beings based solely on race. The former resident must heal and must assist their former neighbors to liberate themselves from this narrow thinking. Chairperson, today we confront a stark and urgent question. Can post-apartheid South Africa truly fulfill its constitutional promise of unity in diversity while racial enclaves like Orania and Kleinfonten persist, deliberately insulated, socially exclusive, and ideologically anchored in apartheid nostalgia? Central to our democratic vision is the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, a critical tool in dismantling historical inequalities and ensuring that education becomes the foundation for social justice, transformation, and upward mobility for all South Africans, regardless of race or background. Yet we witness deliberate distortions of the Bella Act by opposition forces who seek to preserve the racial status quo under the guise of parental rights and cultural autonomy. These misrepresentations are not about defending quality education, but are about entrenching privilege and perpetuating the very same separatism that the Constitution sought to eradicate. In opposing the Bella Act, they are in effect defending the continued existence of apartheid-era strongholds and resisting the inclusive non-racial future that our people have fought so hard to build. The agency of transformation within private schools such as Kuro and historically white higher education institutions like Stellenbosch University cannot be overstated. These spaces continue, either by design or neglect, to reproduce racial hierarchies and cultural norms rooted in our apartheid past. Education is not neutral. It is the very engine through which societies are shaped, where values are taught, and where notions of identity, belonging, and worth are cultivated. When institutions fail to reflect the full diversity of South Africa's population, or when they entrench Afrikaner or Eurocentric world views at the expense of inclusive nation building, they do not merely preserve privilege, they perpetuate supremacist ideologies under the guise of tradition or excellence. We are committed to confront the social construct the social construction of race and the implicit messaging embedded in language policy, admission practices, staffing demographics, and curricular design. Honorable Chair, it is critical to reaffirm that national unity does not mean sameness or the erasure of difference. Unity is not forged in the melting down of our diverse identities, but in the respectful coexistence and celebration of our unique cultures, languages, and histories. Furthermore, while the Constitution guarantees freedom of association and cultural expression, as the DA would say, these rights must be exercised within a framework that advances rather than undermine the broader constitutional mandate of building a united non-racial society. The deliberate racial and cultural exclusivity practiced in these enclaves stands in stark contrast of the spirit of the Constitution, which envisions a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. These isolated communities, by fostering racial homogeneity and excluding others based on historical privilege, risked entrenching the very divisions that our democratic transition sought to dismantle. As I conclude, Honorable Chairperson, we must never lose sight of the painful legacy of apartheid and the structural inequalities it embedded in our society. Our struggle was not merely against a political system, but against an ideology that dehumanized people on the basis of race. Allowing racially exclusive communities to flourish unchallenged is tantamount to betraying that struggle. Let us be clear. We are not opposed to cultural expression, nor do we seek to erase anyone's identity. But cultural preservation cannot become a pretext for racial exclusion or economic secession. True nation building requires shared spaces, shared struggle, and shared futures. History will judge us not by our rhetoric, but by our courage to defend the democratic ideals for which so many sacrifice. Let us not falter in that duty. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We'll now move on to the last speaker for this debate, Honorable Niehaus.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm going to speak first and foremost as a South African. Secondly, as a member of the Economic Freedom Fighters, which is the only truly revolutionary party in South Africa. And then also as someone who's from Afrikaner descent. Let me first deal with the African National Congress. The ANC come and vexes forth about its belief in a united South Africa and non-racialism. And yet it is under 31 years of ANC government that we've seen the continuation of Orania, Kleinfonten, and other racist enclaves. The ANC has no backbone. It could have implemented Section 9 of our Constitution to bring an end to these racist enclaves. It did not do so. So the road to hell for the ANC is paved with good intentions. As far as the Democratic Alliance is concerned, well, the DA tries to argue for some reasons why these enclaves can exist. It still tries to provide some arguments in favor of it. And we know why they do so, because they are also in favor of Cape Exit. We know that they are in cahoots with those of the Cape Exit movement. So the DA has no standing to come and tell us about a united South Africa and its opposition to these racist enclaves. Chair, the least that is said about the Honourable Sauls and the Patriotic Alliance is simply to say the following. You don't understand our history, and it is very rich of you to come and try and attack the economic freedom fighters. How do you dare call the EFF not a party that stands for non-racialism, inclusivity, and stands for the full empowerment of the majority of people? You that abuses cultural identity in the most shallow possible way to try and promote your own little spaza shop. And of course, we hear about the whole issue of distem in our national anthem. My dear Honourable Sauls, you understand nothing. I'm sitting in front of you today as someone who was detained as a member of the liberation struggle, who was tortured, who together with my then wife was forced during that torture to sing distem. But today you think it is a great idea.
Chairperson, I would like to call a point of order here. Chairperson, can I please call a point of order? Chairperson, can I please call a point of order here?
Honorable Niehaus, can you please hold Honorable Van Wyk?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, there is no political party within Parliament who is a spaza shop.
Honorable Van Wyk,
There is
what
a
is your point of order?
My point of order is the Patriotic Alliance is no spaza shop. We are a political party and the
Honorable
sixth
Niehaus did
largest
not say
political
that.
party.
No.
Honorable
Honorable member,
Honorable
member, you are out of order. Honorable Van Wyk, Honorable Van Wyk, you are out of order. Honorable members that are speaking on the platform, I have not recognized you. I will deal with the matter. Honorable Niehaus did not say Patriotic Alliance is a spaza shop. So that is a point of debate. He did not specify on any organization or call any organization here as spaza shop. It is a point of debate and you are out of order. Please do not do that again. Honorable Niehaus, please continue.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I lost almost 2 minutes with this spurious point of order. I hope I will be given the opportunity to utilize that time.
No, you did not lose it. We paused immediately when I called that point of order. So you will continue from the minutes that are remaining.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Let me then respond to the Honourable Mulder of the Economic of the Freedom Front Plus. Well, Honourable Mulder, you as an Afrikaner know very well that what is happening in places such as Orania and Kleinfonten is utter abuse and exploitation also of the whole concept of cultural self-determination. It is a thin veil for racism. Honourable Mulder, I would like you to go and listen to the recordings of the ooms en tannies, die mense wat weggestuur is uit Oranje, toe Oranje geskep is, hoe hulle daar uitgedryf is, hoe die boere daarin beweeg het met gewere, hulle gedreig het en hulle lewens verwoes het. Dit is die realiteit van Oranje, Honourable Mulder. Nie die soort van soetsappige stories wat jy vandag aan ons kom verkoop. En as jy jou mond wil uitwas oor die ekonomiese vryheidsvegters, waarvoor die EFF staan, sonder om te besef dat die EFF die enigste waarlike revolusionêre, nie-rassige organisasie in Suid-Afrika is wat jou sal aanvat en jou rasisme sal aanvat, dan het jy dinge wat kom in die toekoms. Honorable Chair, when I was concluding my initial input, I said the EFF will not stand for this racism. Our marches against Orania and Kleinfonten were a battle cry, a pledge to dismantle these enclaves and restore our nation's unity. We will picket, we will mobilize, we will fight until every racist stronghold is abolished. And we make an inclusive call on all South Africans to join us in this struggle to protect our nation building, to uphold non-racialism, and to forge unbreakable social cohesion. Die EFF bly onwrikbaar. Oranje, Kleinfonten, Eureka en alle racistiese enclaves is 'n dodelike bedreiging vir ons nasie se eenheid, nie-rassigheid en ons samehorigheid. Hulle skend ons grondwet, hulle verraai ons vryheidsstryd en hulle verdeel ons mense. Ons eis hulle onmiddellike afskaffing, wetlike verantwoording vir die oortreders en die integrasie van hulle inwoners in 'n nie-rassige Suid-Afrika. Laat ons 'n duidelike boodskap stuur. Rasisme het hier geen tuiste. Die tyd om op te tree is nou. Kom ons staan saam om die droom van 'n verenigde, nie-rassige Suid-Afrika vir almal te herwin. Baie
Honorable Niehouse, your time has expired. Thank you. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. I will now allow the Honorable Deputy Speaker to introduce the other debate.
Thank you, House Chairperson. We shall now proceed to the last item on the order paper, which is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable L.L. van der Merwe on the need for a renewed focus and new strategies to tackle gender-based violence and femicide as a national crisis. The Honourable van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and let me thank the House on behalf of the IFP for this opportunity. House Chairperson, each year during the 16 Days of Activism campaign for no violence against women and children, this Parliament for a brief moment stops to consider the national crisis that is gender-based violence. For a brief moment, we recognize that our women and children are under siege. For a brief moment, we declare our renewed commitment to fight this brutal war. For 16 days, we cry with the parents who have lost their daughters. We cry with the children who have lost their mothers. And we cry with the friends who have lost their classmates. For a fleeting moment, we remember Anine Boysen, Jocelyn Smith, and Uyinene. For that brief moment, we share the pain of their fathers, their mothers, and their grandmothers. Then, as the 16 Days of Activism campaign draws to a close, we continue with business as usual, only to return to the next 16 Days of Activism campaign to say exactly the same things, to lament exactly the same failures, and to quote exactly the same statistics. And the statistics speak for themselves. South Africa is one of the most unsafe places in the world to be a woman, with levels of violence comparable to countries at war. In just 9 months last year, SAPS recorded more than 31,000 rape cases. That's 113 cases every single day, almost 5 an hour. And remember, these are just the reported cases. How many more go unaccounted for or are just simply lost in a broken system? Then in the first 9 months of 2024-2025, 2,804 women and 902 children were murdered. These are not just statistics, honorable members. These are lives and loved ones, futures and potential extinguished by brutality. A recent newspaper headline put our grim reality into perspective when they asked the question, where are your children, South Africa? According to SAPS, on average, one child is reported missing every 5 hours. Over 16,000 children went missing over the past 18 years, with approximately 4,000 children never found. What does it say, honorable members, about us and our society when our children can simply vanish? The IFP has a clear vision for how we can turn this tide. The IFP believes that we need to address the gaps where they exist, and we need concrete action tied with real political will to beat this national crisis. Firstly, we need to invest in our police force. We need to provide them with better training, more resources, and the capacity to truly protect our communities. The IFP believes that we need to fund and support NGOs and NPOs, not defund them. They are on the front lines providing vital services on behalf of the state to the most vulnerable. Then we need to strengthen the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. We need to give them real resources in order to drive real change. We need to strengthen the Commission for Gender Equality. They have an important role to play, yet they remain largely invisible and largely ineffective. Then, honorable members, we need to hold to account departments that fail our women and children, starting with the Department of Justice and Education. Our justice system, honorable members, is faltering, from our police stations to our courts. We saw this in the Omotoso verdict. We see it in the delays in DNA testing and the lack of rape kits at some police stations. We see this at the Department of Education, that missed its own December 2023 deadline to vet all teachers employed by the state. Currently, only 19% of teachers employed by the state are vetted against the sexual offences register. As a result, our children are at risk. We see these failures in the faces of the trained social workers who are sitting at home. Despite a 2018 cabinet resolution to absorb all social workers trained by the state, by key departments such as health, police, and education, this was simply ignored. We see the failures in the pervasive lawlessness that is corroding the very fabric of our society. We see these failures in the unchecked levels of immigration that poses a safety and security threat to our nation and our communities at large. We must ensure that rapists, murderers face the full consequences of their action and the full might of the law. Criminals should not be emboldened by impunity. Honourable members, we must today confront a difficult and hard truth. The systems meant to protect our women and children and persons with disabilities are failing them. We can no longer afford to turn a blind eye. We can no longer confine our activism to fleeting moments of national outrage, and we can no longer accept these failures. The IFP believes that regardless of our political affiliation, we must stand united and put women and children at the very center of our focus. For a violent war wages in every street, every community, and throughout the length and breadth of our beloved country. Our people need their elected leaders to step into the fight by playing our part. Together, we can win this war. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable van der Merwe. The next speaker is the Honourable Deputy Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities.
Honourable House Chair, honourable members, fellow South Africans, I rise in this August House to address a burning platform which is based on the issue that cuts deep into the hearts of society, the ongoing crisis of gender-based violence and femicide. Despite the progress we have made as a democracy, GBVF continues unabated. Women, children, LGBTI persons, persons with disability, even boys and men continue to live in fear, not only in their homes and communities, but sometimes in the very hands of those who are supposed to love and protect them. Joseph Stalin, in his work on dialectical and historical materialism, asserts, and I quote, "If all phenomena are interconnected and also interdependent, then it is clear that every social system and every social movement in history must be evaluated not from the standpoint of internal justice or some other previous idea, but from the standpoint of the condition which gave rise to that system or that social movement, and which if they are connected," close quote. Honorable House Chair, we meet today to share a solemn moment and collectively ponder on meaningful interventions to fix the country as the social fabric of our nation is tainted by the less salacious movement of scandalous who either perpetuate or actively participate in gender-based violence. For far too long, GBV in South Africa was treated as a social issue, and yet it is an economic issue as well. The magnitude of the scourge fragmented intervention necessitated what His Excellency President Ramaphosa declared it as national crisis and a second pandemic after COVID-19. This was a major turning point which paved the way for more attention, more structured long-term solutions in the form of National Strategic Plan on GBVF. Our Constitution is clear, and we continue to uphold this progressive legal prescript. Freedom and security of persons, equality, life, freedom of association, and human dignity are non-negotiable rights. And everyone has a right to be free from all forms of violence from either public or private sources. The question before us today is clear. How can women and girls and all other vulnerable groups be safe in the country where by the end of my short address, the statistic indicates that at least 14 women would have been sexually violated? The answer rests with Stalin's assertion on all social phenomena. We must address GBV where it starts, as GBV does not proliferate outside the boundaries of what we have come to normalize as non-consequential in society. Where is the genesis of GBV in society and what our response as government looks like? The recent Human Science Research Council baseline study on GBV highlighted a causal link between GBV incidents which emanate from what may be considered soft violence because no physical harm is inflicted on victims. The study demonstrates it is started with verbal, emotional, financial, online, and other forms of nuances violence, ultimately ends in physical abuse and worst case scenario, femicide. It is why, whereas government, we have committed to start with the key pillars, and particularly I want to highlight pillar 2 of the NSP of GBV on prevention and rebuilding social cohesion, that reminds us that drivers of GBV are a complex interplay of factors that act at individual, relation, community, and societal level, driven by social and political forces. We must all understand this context of GBVF to appreciate that we need to root out all forms of abuse, particularly soft violence, which is insidious, if we are to eradicate gender-based violence. Honorable members, much has been made by government and we continue to drive efforts to reverse the impact of gender-based violence in our communities. Government's response to GBVF have evolved considerably over the years, linked to the earlier assertion in a key milestone that was developed, the development of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, which provide a coordinated multi-sectoral framework across the 6 pillars. And I want to also highlight to you, this GBVF plan is a multi-sectoral. It was not only just the government voice, but also including civil society and private sector that contributed to these 6 pillars include accountability and coordination, prevention and rebuilding social cohesion, justice, safety and protection, response, care and support and healing, economic empowerment for survivors, research and information management. This, yes, is an ambitious plan that can be achieved when we all work together. We are part of the tripartite monitoring mechanism comprising our department, the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, and the Presidency to ensure accountability and coherence in implementation. What we must appreciate in that is the work that requires all of society approach, and we welcome the efforts by civil society, the private sector, politicians, traditional leaders, faith-based sector, institution protecting democracy, the private individuals. What we need more is people to change their behavior in their homes, in our communities, around children, around health professionals, so that we help to prevent gender-based violence. There has been a great progress with regards to also the legal reform in tackling the scourge. Several laws now provide much stronger protection and reporting mechanism. You look at Criminal Law Amendment Act that strengthened the National Register for Sexual Offenders. Key reforms that are key also included here also speaks to the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Act of 12 of 2021, which improved processes around bail, parole, and sentencing in gender-based violence. The Domestic Violence Amendment Act, which modernizes and strengthens the original 1998 Domestic Violence Act. I'm raising all of this also noting the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill, which of course has not necessarily been signed yet, but it will help us to deal with the hate crimes and hate speech that continues in society. Other supportive legislation and policy framework, the Children Amendment Bill, the Gender Responsive Budgeting Framework, that also will help us to ensure gender consideration, including GBVF, are a part of budgeting and service delivery planning across departments. A whole of government continues to coalesce on the GBV challenge, and justice, crime prevention and security cluster have developed and will be implementing a 90-day acceleration action plan to address GBV in our communities. This comprehensive plan brings together departments across government. It also brings together authorities that focuses on traditional affairs, health, and others to consolidate a common approach and maximize the impact of interventions. Three key impacts on these: strengthening prevention programs is quite key, as I've highlighted, strengthening the prioritization of Thuthuzela care centers in areas which we have highest incidence. As you are aware, we've got over 65 Thuthuzela care centers that ensures victim access, medical, legal, and psychological services as and when instances of GBV are committed. We will also upscale the implementation of the National Child Protection Register in many of the provinces where we will conduct a meta-analysis of child sex offenders in South Africa, identifying new list of serial rapists and apply the serial rapist prioritization initiative. We will also accelerate the DNA project to identify areas where delays and make necessary intervention to ensure that all matters are prioritized. And of course, strengthen government's evidence-based decision-making by integrating all GBV admin data across the spheres of government and improve the coordination of data in this area. Honorable members, we continue to deal with many challenges of GBV incidents, and also we deal with the many challenges that survivors experience. The secondary victimization that survivors experience when seeking justice, the many cases that go unreported due to fear, stigma, or even the challenge of justice system. And in rural communities like those in Matatiele, services are scarce and inaccessible. However, our efforts strive to accelerate intervention additional to various others as implemented by various departments. Perhaps those who claim that they do not see government's intervention, or they do not have seen our faces in this regard in the trenches as we battle to deal with the patriarchal iterations of misogyny, sexism, homophobia, and all forms of intolerance, are correct. They are not claiming, they do not know. They are correct because they are nowhere to be found themselves in lived experiences of GBVF victims and survivors. And they are not there to also
Honourable Deputy Minister, your
represent
time has
issues.
expired. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you.
The next speaker that I'm calling is the Honourable Muhammad.
Honourable Chair, honourable members, I greet you all with the universal greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I rise today with the pain of a nation that is bleeding from the bodies of our women and children. Honourable Chair, members, a woman was just killed in South Africa now, and by the end of this sitting, there will be another. How many bodies must we bury before we stop pretending to be shocked? Let me begin with one name, Shegofatso Pule, a young pregnant woman stabbed and hanged from a tree. She was only 28 years old. Her death shocked the nation. It made headlines, but it did not change the nation. That is the shame that rests on this DA-led government. Every few weeks, we hear a new hashtag, hashtag Kwekwe, hashtag Halima Hussein Preston, and ultimately, hashtag Am I Next? Let me be very clear. Gender-based violence and femicide is not a side issue. It is a national emergency. A woman is murdered every 3 hours in South Africa. Like I said, by the time this debate ends, someone's mother, someone's daughter, sister, or lover will be dead. At least 3 women are killed daily by their partners. According to the World Health Organization, South Africa's femicide rate is 5 times higher than the global average. Now ask yourself this. How 30 years into democracy has our freedom been realized when the most unsafe thing in this country is merely being a woman? This is not just a woman's issue. This is a nation's failure. And where is the state in all of this? We have a GBVF council that is underfunded, underpowered, and largely invisible. We have a national strategic plan, 6 pillars, but no spine. We had a moral regeneration movement led by His Excellency President Zuma himself. Yet the moral decay continues. The Domestic Violence Act is violated by the very institutions that are supposed to enforce it. And while women scream for help, this DA-led government whispers policies. Quite frankly, the silence of the state is not neutral. Quite frankly, the silence of the state is not neutral, it is complicit. And under this current government, GBVF...
My apologies, Honourable Muhammad. Honourable Rekana, you are unmuting yourself. Honourable Rekana, please mute yourself. Please proceed, Honourable Member.
And under this...
Honourable Muhammad, my apologies. Could I please ask the table to remove or mute the Honourable Rekwana? Thank you. Honourable Muhammad, my apologies. Please proceed.
The Domestic Violence Act is violated by the very institutions that are supposed to enforce it. And while women scream for help, this DA-led government whispers policies. Quite frankly, the silence of the state is not neutral, it is complicit. And under this current government, GBVF is not just failing to be stopped, it is being allowed to thrive. We saw this recently with Pamela Mabini, a whistleblower of an accused rapist pastor. She was shot dead in her car on the driveway of her home in KwaZulu, Geberha. We saw it when young girls and women bravely stood in court to relay the painful stories of being sexually assaulted by someone who was supposed to be a man of God and who was trusted by the parents of those children to keep them safe. But what he did, instead, he had his way with them. How do we expect women to come forth and speak up against such atrocities, when as a country we witnessed the case of a man who had a count of 32 charges and 8 years of jail for sexually violating young women in a place of worship just being dropped. Let us talk about policing. We spend over 2 billion on VIP protection, whilst in many police stations there are no rape kits. Some SAPS officers don't even know what a protection order looks like. There are over 1,200 police stations, yet fewer than 250 have designated victim-friendly rooms. Where do you expect a traumatized survivor to find dignity? In the dirty corridor? In the same building where the abuser might be laughing with the officers? We have courts where trials take 5 years, where dockets disappear, where survivors give up because the system wears them down. That is not justice. That is abandonment. Honorable members, let us not pretend this is only a policing problem. This is also a cultural problem, a political problem, and a leadership problem. We raise boys to dominate, not to respect. We turn pastors into predators. We turn tradition into justification. And then we get shocked when girls are abused at schools, women beaten in public, and grandmothers strangled in rural areas. This, Honorable Chair and members, is not just a woman issue, but it is a failure of a nation. Under this so-called government of national unity, the reality is stark. The system is broken, and the silence is a betrayal. The Mkhonto Wesizwe Party does not plead. We demand and we will deliver. We are not just here to tick boxes. We are here to turn the tables. We, the Mkhonto Wesizwe Party, will fully fund the GBVF Council. We will hold every province accountable for implementation. We, the Mkhonto Wesizwe Party, will implement ring-faced budget allocations for shelters, trauma counseling, and legal aid like we do for VIP protection services. We, the Mkhonto Wesizwe Party, will also ensure that every police station has a functioning victim support unit with trained and vetted officers by law. We will amend laws to create survivor-driven courts where secondary victimization is punishable. We, the Mkhonto Wesizwe Party, will establish a national GBVF response fund, drawing from corporate social responsibility levies. We will make quarterly reporting mandatory for every department, from health to education to transport, because GBVF is not just a department of women's issues. No, it's an every department issue. And finally, we will change the culture with compulsory gender sensitivity education in every school from grade R to matric. We will drive campaigns, not just during Women's Month, but every month, and with men in leadership standing up, not only in hashtags, but in action. To the women of South Africa, I say, you are not crazy, you are not hysterical, you are not weak, and you're certainly not alone. You are right, you are brave, you are enough. And to the men who abuse, your time is up. Your impunity is over. And to this DA-led government who has failed us, the Mkhonto Wesizwe Party is coming. We will not keep quiet. We will not stand by, and we will not stop until this killing stops. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable. The next speaker is the Honourable Khanyile.
That was powerful submission.
Thank you, Allah.
Honourable Deputy
Order,
Speaker,
honourable
can you
members.
please protect me? Thank you very
Yes.
much. Through you, Honourable Chair, I understand that the MK Party is still very new, but Honourable Mohammed needs to understand that the national government is not a DA-led government. It's a government of national unity. Chairperson, honourable members, today we gather in this August House not to just raise awareness, but to ensure that there is action for the countless victims who have been denied justice by our system, who have been left hopeless even after they have taken every measure available to them to ensure perpetrators of gender-based violence are in the end locked up where they belong, behind bars. As I reflect on this, I'm reminded that when we fail to arrest and prosecute efficiently the perpetrators of gender-based violence, we are not only denying victims justice, we are in fact further victimizing them. We teach the world that abuse can be overlooked and that dignity is optional. Chairperson, I would like to take this moment and express my sincerest condolences to the families of Sinenhlanhla Matonzi, who was allegedly stabbed to death by her ex-boyfriend at her place of work, Pick n Pay, in Protea Glen on the 5th of May 2025. And to the family of Gwanele Lamula, who was shot multiple times on 5th Avenue, London in Alexandra, just a week ago on her way back home after she dropped off her child at the crash. Chairperson, these murders are a clear indication that our country faces a war on women. While we acknowledge that this message may not bring them back, we want to assure their families that as members of this House, we have heard and we have seen their family members dying in the full view of other community members. We don't only stand with them during this difficult time. On this day, we are standing here to urge South African police services and national prosecuting authorities to act with agency in curbing the scourge of gender-based violence. According to statistics released in November 2024, it indicates that between April 2023 to September 2024, the FSC unit registered following successes. 29,150 GBVF perpetrators were arrested. 556 accused were handed down life sentences. 480 accused were handed down imprisonment sentences for 20 years and above. 998 accused were handed down prison sentences ranging between 10 to 19 years, and 1,792 accused were handed down 1 to 9 years imprisonment sentences. This indicates that from the 29,150 perpetrators arrested, there is a total of 25,324 which are not accounted for. This may further fuel the underreporting of GBV cases in South Africa, as victims may view a laying of a charge at a police station as a fruitless activity, unlikely to bring them justice. Gender-based violence also comes at a great economic cost. A report by KPMG and Sonke Justice Initiative reveals that GBV results in an economic downturn of 0.94% annually, largely affecting aggregate supply and demand. We urge the South African Police Services and National Prosecuting Authority to ensure that these cases are speedily finalized to restore faith and trust in the judiciary. Honorable members, our country is still reeling in shock due to the acquittal of Mr. Omotoso, who faced 30 charges of rape, racketeering, and human trafficking, and with his co-accused relating to activities at the Jesus Dominion International Church. When Judge Eamon Schoeman handed down her judgment, amongst some of the reasons she cited insufficient evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, and inadequate cross-examination. This points to the reality that more training needs to be offered to SAPS and NPA to ensure they carry out successful prosecutions, which will lead to convictions. There must also be a tool in place to measure the effectiveness of the training provided. We have also witnessed on a number of occasions how those who lack financial muscle are denied justice. Justice should be impartial and grounded in truth, not influenced by wealth, power, or status. When financial resources start to determine the quality of legal defense, access to evidence, or even the pace of a trial, the fairness of the entire system is called into question. Many people, especially victims of abuse of marginalized groups, can feel silenced or overlooked in such systems. The portfolio on women, youth, and persons with disabilities conducted an oversight in March 2025. We visited Umlazi police station, as reports suggest that the station recorded highest number of GBVF and rape cases. During the deliberations, it was brought to our attention that one of the biggest obstacles in resolving the rape cases was the backlog on DNA samples submitted. Chairperson, we cannot defeat the scourge of gender-based violence if state functionaries treat this important portfolio as their side hustle. The minister and her deputy have only attended only three of the total of 17 meetings of the committee for 2025. We need a collaborated effort to fight gender-based violence, and we need the executive to roll up their sleeves and be part of the fight against GBV. This cannot only be done through television interviews, as a lot of work happens in Parliament. We would rather have the minister and deputy attending more committee meetings and ensure all GBVF-related queries are attended to urgently and that they are all equally treated with the importance and urgency they deserve. The establishment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence to provide actionable plans to combat GBV has been much too long in the making. Honorable members, beyond the annual 16 Days of Activism campaign, the Democratic Alliance calls for a year-round effort to combat GBV. This includes comprehensive age-appropriate sex education in schools to promote respect and equality from a young age. Community dialogues led by local leaders, including traditional and religious authorities, to shift attitudes, job creation and skills development for women to reduce financial dependency on abusive partners, support for women-owned businesses and economic activities, enhancing survivor support services such as shelters, counseling, and legal aid, strengthening law enforcement mechanisms to ensure timely and sensitive handling of GBV cases, implementing community-based awareness programs focusing on gender equality and the root causes of violence, partnering with community leaders, encouraging community engagement to report abuse and challenge harmful societal norms, improve data gathering on gender-based violence cases to inform policy and track progress, fund research and understand evolving dynamics of GBV and test its intervention effectiveness. Chairperson, true justice begins when every voice is heard and every wound is honored with the truth. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Lola.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. It is with a heavy heart that I rise today, not just as a voice for women, but as a voice for a nation in crisis. Gender-based violence and femicide have become a silent pandemic in our country, claiming lives with devastating regularity. Over African population is constituted by women, making females the largest population group per gender in the country. Despite this, every 4 in 10 women are unemployed in this country, and those who work find themselves getting paid less for doing the same job as men. This, Chair, is a structural manifestation of the deep-seated problem facing women in this country, and it is at the center of the pernicious and systematic problem of gender-based violence and femicide. The violence itself is a manifestation of an even more heinous problem, and that is state-enabled forms of violence against women. These are more pervasive and their impact more destructive. We find this in Bisho in Eastern Cape, where senior managers demand sex for jobs from interns and junior staff. We find it in the judiciary even, where people as senior as Judge President Benenke now stand accused of violating junior and much younger female staff. We find it in our schools, where school principals, such as the principal of that school in Matatiele, where Kwekwe was molested, are given free rein to do so as they please. We find it even in churches, where unrepentant scumbags, such as Timothy Omoto, are allowed to move freely in this country, raping and abusing women at will. To this end, we remember the timeless activism of Pamela Mabini, a renowned activist in Gqeberha, who was fundamental in the exposure of Omotoso's crime. She was killed merciless at the beginning of this year. The story of Pamela is a constant reminder of what awaits female activists in this country, the brutality of death, often with immunity. Many women in this country, Chair, have suffered this form of gender-based violence silently because they know for a fact that they are on their own. The silent violence of senior people like Mbenenge disempowers. It strips one of their humanity. It is for this reason that all women in this country should stand behind Andiswa Mengo and applaud her bravery and her refusal to be silent in the face of abuse from those with power. Chairperson, if ordinary men on the street see powerful men like Mbenenge commit this act without much condemnation from society, what hope in hell do we have that we can stop the pervasive violence? Chairperson, for the past 10 years or so, the South African Police Service crime statistics put reported cases of rape at around 10,000 each and every quarter. That means there is an average of 40,000 women raped in this every year. We know that a serious number of rape cases aren't even reported at police stations because perpetrators are the very same ones who provide food and shelter for their victims. In the face of all this destruction, Chair, the state is hopeless, with no ability whatsoever to respond to this crisis level of sadistic violence against women in this country. We need community-led rapid response teams that will focus on the communities at the street level. These teams would include trained social workers, trauma counselors, SAPS representatives, and trusted community members. Their role would be to respond within 24 hours to any reported GBVF case, offering immediate support, safe accommodation, and psychological care. We need SAPS to change tact and start a more focused approach in fighting the violence against women. But more importantly, we need a government-led, community-based consensus to empower women and free them from the strongholds of violence in their households, at work, in our churches, and even in our political parties. There is no will nor capacity in this government or neoliberal unity to tackle these challenges. Only a resolute leadership provided by the EFF can free women from this bondage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Malola. The next speaker is the Honourable Machi.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The IFP rises today to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to addressing the scourge of gender-based violence and the femicide GBVF, which remains one of the gravest human rights violations in our country. Despite national outcry and multiple action plans, South Africa continues to record alarming rates of violence against women and children. The reality is that no policy will be effective unless meshed with implementation, accountability, and societal will. GBVF is not just a women's issue. It is a national crisis, and it demands a coordinated response from every sector of government and society. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the IFP believes that our current strategies are not yielding the impact they should. What is needed now is not just more policies, innovative thinking, and better coordination. We must focus on prevention as much as we do on a response. That means investing in community-level interventions, improving access to justice for survivors, and ensuring that law enforcement officers are trained to handle GBV cases with sensitivity and urgency. We must also address the underlying drivers of GBVF: poverty, patriarchal norms, unemployment, and substance abuse, amongst other things. Prevention must begin at home, in schools, and within cultural and faith-based institutions. The IFP also calls for greater transparency and accountability in the allocation of GBV-related funding. Civic society organizations, especially those led by women, must be properly supported and not sidelines in the fight against this epidemic. Let us not allow another woman's life to be reduced to a statistic. Let us build a society where every woman and child feels safe and protected. We owe it to the survivors, those who lost their lives to GBVF, and we owe it to the nation of to the future of our nation. I thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Machi. And our next speaker is the Honourable Peterson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Greetings, honourable members. Most responses to GBVF are reactive, not preventative, and rarely address the deeper socio-economic factors. 1 in 3 women globally will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, usually at the hands of someone that they know. These are not just stats, Deputy Speaker. These are our sisters, mothers, friends, and daughters. While we remember the name Chesney Kepler, Sinenhlanhla Matosi, Nokotula Ndlovu, chairperson, we must also remember that we must acknowledge that a growing and uncomfortable truth that men too are victims of GBVF, and society remains largely silent on their pain. We must be clear that gender-based violence is not just a one gender suffering more than another. It is about power, control, and harmful gender norms. We need a renewed focus, not only to protect women and girls, but also to include men and boys in GBVF frameworks. Prevention programs must be inclusive, and education must teach all children that violence is unacceptable, regardless of who the victim is. We need new strategies because the old ones are failing. Shelters are underfunded, victims are silenced or re-traumatized by the justice system. Awareness campaigns are not enough, and we need real accountability, better education from early childhood, and stronger support system for survivors. In conclusion, Chairperson, this is a human rights issue. It affects our economy, our communities, and our future. We cannot afford to normalize gender-based violence. We need to treat it with the same urgency as any national emergency. Let us renew our focus, let us create new strategies, and let us finally say, enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Peterson. I now call on the Honourable Denner.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, a post office in Cape Town, situated between a police station and a high school, opposite a pet store, became a horrible crime scene on 24 August 2019. This is where a young woman in the prime of her life lost her life at the hands of a man who could not control himself or his urges. This is when the public outcry over Uyenene's senseless death began, where the Am I Next movement started. Subsequently, GBV was declared a national crisis. A joint sitting of Parliament was convened to discuss GBV and unite the country behind a national plan. A GBVF national strategic plan was launched and allocated 1.6 billion rand. Proposed reforms included harsher sentences for perpetrators of these crimes, a possible register of GBV offenders, improvement of sexual offences courts, and addressing of systemic challenges such as backlogs of cases and backlogs in DNA testing. Yet sadly, despite the Am I Next movement and everything mostly said and some done, millions of women and children were indeed next and will continue to be next if this pandemic of violence towards women and children is not fiercely fought on all possible fronts. Die voorsitter van die portefeulje komitee oor vroue, kinders en mense met gestremthede is korrek. 'n Hernieude fokus op hierdie pandemie van geweld is inderdaad dringend nodig. Trouwens, hierdie fokus moet herhaaldelik hernieu word. Ons kan nie bekostig dat enige iets die aandag van hierdie veldtog aftrek nie. En nuwe strategieë moet deurlopend ondersoek word, maar die behoorlike implementering van bestaande strategieë moet eers as prioriteit dringend vooropgestel word. Voorts is 'n holistiese benadering deur die verskeie departemente van die regering en al 3 sfere van regering uiters belangrik. Agterstande met ondersoeke van hierdie misdade en DNS-toetsing moet uitgewis word. Die doeltreffendheid van die polisie en nasionale vervolgingsgesag, fasiliteite by polisiestasies en howe is belangrik, maar so ook is behoorlike gesondheidsorg vir vroue, voldoende onderrig en opleiding wat vroue bemagtig om weg te breek uit siklusse van geweld en mishandeling en om vir hulself en vir hul kinders te sorg, as ook om seuns en mans te onderrig en bemagtig om beter te wees as die wat hulself skuldig maak aan hierdie tipe misdade. Ekonomiese groei en werkskepping moet ook prioriteit geniet. Want hand aan hand met werkloosheid loop sosiale ewels soos drank en dwelmmisbruik en ander vorme van geweld wat hierdie misdade aanblaas en die lys gaan aan. Adjunkspeaker, dis ook nie net mans wat hulself aan hierdie misdade skuldig maak nie. 'n Vinnige soektog op netwerk 24 vanoggend lewer die name van 2 dogtertjies op wat na bewering aan die hand van vroue gesterf het. Nada Jane Chalita en Chrisley Dirker en Jocelyn Smith, wat deur haar eie ma verkoop is vir eie gewin. Wat 'n skreiende skande dat die oorlog op vroue en kinders selfs deur vroue gevoer word. Waar is jou siel as jy 'n 2 of 'n 4-jarige so aanrand dat dit haar dood veroorsaak? As jy 'n 8 dae oue baba verkrag en vermoor omdat haar gehuil jou gepla het? Jou eie kind verkoop, die ma van jou kinders doodslaan of jouself op 'n vrou afdwing want jou drange is belangriker as 'n ander persoon se wil en liggaamlike integriteit. Ons heel eerste en grootste probleem, agbare adjunkspeaker, is dat ons samelewing se morele bodem uitgeval het. Ons waardestelsels, naaste liefde, respek vir mekaar en onsself, wat het daarvan geword? Alvorens dit herstel word, sal ons nie suksesvol wees in ons pogings om hierdie pandemie van geweld te bekamp nie. En wie weet hoeveel gaan volgende wees. Dankie.
Baie dankie agbare Denner. I now call on the Honourable Leklape. Is the Honourable Leklape on the platform?
Yes,
there you
Chair,
are. Please proceed.
I am on the platform. Sorry about the technological hiccup. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I'd like to remind honorable members that justice will not bring our children back. So when we emphasize on justice and police, it's too late. Cure is costly, but prevention is priceless. Now, our institutions are not safe for women. And the place where they are most unsafe is in the home. So unless we go back into the home and look at what it is that makes women unsafe in the home, we will never get to the bottom of this problem. We have social values and cultures that undermine women, that commoditize women, that devalue women. I'll give you a simple example. When I grew up, one of my paternal grandmothers spanked me for washing dishes and said, that's not what men do. Now, it's those social norms that demean women. It's those social norms that create monsters in us men. And unless we go back to those values, where when men demean women, they say, I'm a Tswana man, I'm a Zulu man, and they rely on culture to dehumanize others, we will never get to the bottom of this problem. We've just had a famous person, Meg G, demean our mothers, demean our sisters, demean our daughters, and it's now an area for lawfare. As long as we have all these cultural rights and human rights and freedoms of speech that demean women, we will never get to the bottom of this. As long as we have social norms that say a man's duty is to provide, like women can't provide for themselves, and we disable them from providing from themselves, and they are not treated as equal. As long as we have norms that provides people that want to go into marriage as husband and wife with our stereotypical role definition of what a husband is, what a wife is, we are promoting GBV. It is a fertile ground for GBV. Now, when the topic was introduced, it said, let's focus on renewed strategies. Unless we deal with what happens at home and the boys that we raise and the monsters that we become as men, we will never get on top of this problem. Unless we treat it as equal human beings, unless we raise our children to respect each other. You know, I'll be raised to protect my sister, but I'm raised not to protect another person's sister. We need to go back to where women are important, women are protected, women are equal to boys, and boys are educated that they are not superior. You know, we all talk about white superiority. What we never talk about is male entitlement and male superiority and toxic masculinity. And unless we come up with strategies to deal with it, unless we devote funding to challenging the cultural norms, our institutions will be the unsafest places. The homes, the religious institutions, the schools, the workplaces, the parliaments of this world. Are women parliamentarians safe in parliament? Has anybody asked that question? Are they given the respect that men take for granted? Speech, it starts with what we allow people to say about others, that people become devalued. Freedom of speech should come with responsibilities, and there should be consequences for reckless speech, like McG.
Thank you, Honourable
has emphasized.
Leklapi. Your time has expired.
Thank you, Chair.
The next speaker is the Honourable Ntanju.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. South Africa is not facing a crime wave. We are fighting a war on women. Gender-based violence and femicide has reached crisis levels in our country. A woman is murdered every 3 hours. This is not just a statistic, but a national shame. As the UDM, we call for a renewed focus, a united front, and real action. The Sexual Offenders Register must be made publicly accessible so that communities, schools, employers, and women can easily screen and protect themselves. In this case, transparency will save lives. The UDM demands that sexual offenders be denied bail and parole. Research has proven that many of them reoffend, meaning that while the system keeps giving them a chance, it is creating more victims. We need more Tutuzela care centers across the country. Survivors should not have to travel for hours or be turned away from care. Access to justice and trauma support must be a right, not a luxury. We cannot talk about GBVF without talking about economic emancipation of women. We advocate for economic liberation of women as a weapon in the fight against GBVF. We call for real support for women in business, especially small business owners, to ensure that they have the power to walk away and rebuild their lives. Economic dependency traps women in cycles of abuse. In conclusion, we call upon the Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability to step up. This department needs to be visible on the ground and lead from the front. The GBVF dashboard may track data, but it doesn't track the pain of women waiting for justice. This digital tool won't help a woman in a rural village with no internet, no transport, and no protection. We need real resources on the ground, not just bird's eye views on the top. Women are waiting, survivors are waiting. Let's not fail them. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Nontenja. Let me just make sure whether we have any speakers from RISE. I don't see anyone. ATM. Not. And then we move on to the Honourable Sali.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and to all honourable members, Assalamu alaikum. Gender-based violence and femicide remains a crisis in South Africa, and there is a dire need for systematic change beyond campaigns. Normalization of violence, the lack of accountability, and stringent preventative measures perpetuates a cycle of harm that claims innocent lives daily. The current campaigns must be radically strengthened, and the inefficiency of preventative measures to eradicate violence must be addressed. Many names today is unspoken and have just become a stats figure. They only become known when their story grabs media attention. I remind all that these are children, women, and even men who had hopes, desires, and aspirations, and many have been brutally raped, abused, killed, and harmed. Let no name go unspoken. The 2020 National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Interventions regarding new laws to protect survivors of GBV has failed to improve the response of police to GBV matters, and too few substations have victim-friendly centers. The latest police and court statistics give a grim picture of GBV cases and lack of resources. The stats are people, many of them are loved ones. It is unacceptable, and we need bold action and comprehensive education to stop GBV and femicide. The strategies in place are not effective, despite the changes in legislation over the years. At the beginning of the signing of the National Council of GBV and Femicide Bill, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the Statutory Council would be a multi-sectoral body made up of expertise from civil society. But what has been done since the Act became effective? Alcohol has a negative impact on society, but the government is still dragging its feet in making alcohol a prominent policy goal. In South Africa, shebeens have been identified as major springboards for criminal and violent acts, yet we remained complacent. Several studies confirm high levels of blood alcohol among patients presenting to trauma units with injuries from rape and murder, etc. Social media has also become a space where acts of violence are sensationalized and weaponized. The aspects contributing to the increased level of GBV and femicide is well documented, but the reality is that the failures to ensure laws that are enforced, expedition of cases, harsher punishments, the lack of holding perpetrators accountable is emboldening these criminals and further traumatizing our society. Criminals have more rights and access to help than victims. Victims continue to suffer due to failures. All role players, SAPS, justice system, the NPA, and those within community intended to protect needs to step up. The lack of resources and the lack of skills needs to be addressed. Failure to correctly investigate matters remains a crucial concern, with matters being withdrawn as a result. The lack of the DNA results coming out and the outstanding amount of DNA results remains highly concerning. Failure to employ social workers in schools and the relevant sector is a travesty to justice. We need more action, less words. We need accountability, transparency, and visibility. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Sali. The next speaker is the Honourable Motaung.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the South African poet, Kollega Phuthuma, penned down a painful yet movie poet titled, "Every 3 hours it goes." Every 3 hours, this country buries us before we are born, calls us by our obituaries before it calls us by our names. Graves with girls taken too soon. Danger zone disguised as the safe space with murderers who are husbands' material, schools with pedophiles with degrees in working with children, lecture halls with molesters. Every 3 hours, one of us does not make it. Deputy Speaker, this poem gives a scary yet vivid picture of a day in the life of a woman living in South Africa. Our country faces escalating gender-based violence and femicide, which is amongst the highest globally. Sustainable Development Goal 5 aims to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2030. It aims to eliminate all types of violence against women and girls in both public and private sector, including trafficking, sexual exploitation, and other forms of abuse. With just 5 years to 2030, it appears that we are very far from achieving that goal. In 2022, President Ramaphosa signed into law 3 acts to prevent and combat gender-based violence. These acts are commonly referred to as the 3 GBV acts. Since their confirmation into law, some progress has been recorded in 2024. The National Council of Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act was signed into a law, and a national structure to oversee a coordinated response was established. In our election manifesto, we committed to taking a comprehensive approach to fighting crime through the integrated violence and crime prevention strategy. We continue to implement our resolutions. We have always advocated for a victim-centered approach to matters of GBV. We have 65 Thuthuzela care centers nationally, which are one-stop facilities, which were introduced as part of South Africa's anti-rape strategy. Thuthuzela centers are aimed at reducing secondary victimization. Matters reported at the Thuthuzela Center site increased from 36,813 in 2022-2023 to 41,158 in 2023-2024, showing an increment of 12%. 2 additional Thuthuzela care center sites were established in the last financial year. As introduced by the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Act, demonstrations, gestures, or any form of non-verbal expression, including the use of devices to communicate, are now legally considered as oral evidence. There are 44 GBV shelters in 52 districts, and efforts are being made by the police to provide more victim-friendly services. The President announced the establishment of 16 additional sexual offences courts within this financial year. Towards a disability-centric court system, the Department of Justice further upgraded additional 66 courts in line with the minimum service standard for the strategy on reasonable accommodations and measures to access justice for court users with disabilities at the lower courts. This has brought the national footprint of the disability-centric courts to 145. There are other successes, but it will be a grave injustice to overlook the deficits in the system. On the 1st June 2024, the Public Protector South Africa released a report on the investigations into administrative deficits relating to the processing of gender-based violence-related matters within the South African criminal justice system. The allegation that the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, Social Development, and SAPS did not put adequate measures in place that effectively protect the victims of GBV were verified. The investigation came after a result of former Deputy Minister of Justice, Honorable John Jeffrey, requesting the Public Protector to look into the said deficits. As the Portfolio Committee of Justice, we continue to monitor the department in the implementation of the Public Protector's remedial actions. The justice system must function properly, and there must be effective collaboration between the SAPS and the Department of Social Development as envisaged by the Constitution, which provides for the fostering of friendly relations, institutions assisting and supporting, informing and consulting one another on matters of common interest. Deputy Speaker, we are concerned about the shortage of psychologists, psychiatrists for GBV victims, while there are social workers and even GBV specialists, social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists who play a crucial role, particularly in cases where victims reported sexual offenses years after the incident. Their expert knowledge is necessary for courts to understand the long-term trauma experienced by victims. Special attention needs to be paid to victims with mental disabilities who are recognized as the vulnerable group. The African National Congress called and continue to call for collaboration by all stakeholders in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. Civic society, traditional leaders, and faith-based organizations and private sector should work together with government in the fight against this pandemic. Government must inspire confidence in the people it represents. All people must feel safe. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Motaung. The NCC. We don't have anyone, and then I'm going to go to the UAT. Honourable Mashlatsi, are you going to participate in the debate?
Yes, Deputy Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you so much. The gender-based violence and femicide continue to plague South Africa in an epidemic proportion, with femicide rate 5 times higher than the global average, and nearly half of a women experiencing intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Despite the National Strategic Plan 21 billion rand commitment and impressive prosecution rates of 92.2 conviction rate for intimate partner femicide, the system remains inaccessible for most survivors. Shockingly, only 134 of 1,150 police stations have dedicated GBV desk, while economic barriers prevent 40% of abused women from living violent relationships due to financial dependence. The 162 million GBV Response Fund has reached just 110 organizations in 3 years, a drop in the ocean for a crisis claiming women's life every 3 hours. These statistics reveal the fatal disconnection between the policy and implementation. Demanding Asian course correction through survivor center economic empowerment, police reform, and digital protection in our tech-driven era. The time has come for radical, multi-sectoral strategy that matches the scale of this national emergency. With 63 Tutuzela centers handling 12,000 cases annually, yet unable to meet demand, we must overhaul our approach. Economic intervention should directly target 60% of female-headed households living in poverty through microloans and skill development, while specialized GBV courts could address 74.4% conviction rates for sexual offenses that currently fail to deter the perpetrators. Most critically, we must confront the root causes. The research showed that men who believe in male entitlement are 5 times more likely to commit GBV, proving that prevention programs in schools, workshops are non-negotiable. This is not merely a policy reform, it's a societal reckoning that demands every citizen's participation to dismantle the structure enabling our femicide crisis. The battle against GBV demands nothing less than national movement, one that transforms statistic into solution and outrage into action. While 91.9% femicide conviction rates prove our legal system can deliver justice, the 51% of women who never report their abuse reveals how far we must still go.
Thank you, Honourable Mashlatsi. Your time has expired.
Thank you,
And I invite
Chairperson.
the Honourable Schikkeling.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Let me start with the truth, and it's going to sting. For millions of women, South Africa is a battleground of survival. We are not in crisis mode, we are in survival mode. Women and girls in this country are not living, they're dodging fists, dodging bullets, dodging the very system that's supposed to protect them. But too often, it just looks the other way. And every time we fail to act, we become complicit in their suffering. This is not a debate about statistics, but for the record, over 10,500 rape cases were reported in just the last 3 months of 2024. That's 117 women a day that we know of. 117 women who had the courage to report an unimaginable crime. Think of the thousands of women and girls whose perpetrators remain unreported, their dignities unrestored. This is a national emergency, a disaster, and it must be treated like one. Honourable members, GBVF is not an individual act of violence. It leaves behind deep psychological, social, and economic scars that stretch across generations. The child who witnesses abuse grows up afraid of love. The woman who escapes her life still carries the trauma in her bones. The LGBTQI+ member who lives with the shame of the disgusting practice of so-called corrective rape sits in silence. Men who fear social stigma and going against the grain of gender norms are discouraged from showing vulnerability or seeking help. This violence multiplies quietly and relentlessly until it can no longer be contained. In his 2025 State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged this reality and made several commitments which we welcome. But I say this clearly, promises do not offer protection. A beautifully worded commitment means nothing if it shrivels and dies in the face of political unwillingness to make it happen. We can no longer tiptoe around this issue. So let's talk about what real action looks like. Justice must wear tackies, not slippers. Our FCS units must be elite, not afterthoughts. These units need proper funding, skilled staff, and trauma-informed training. And here's a simple rule. If you're found guilty of GBV or even have a pending case, you should not be anywhere near survivors, not in FCS, not in a courtroom, not in a uniform, period. The Democratic Alliance is appalled and outraged by the reported sexual assault of a police trainee by an instructor. It's a grotesque betrayal of duty and a criminal act that must be met with the full force of the law. We cannot allow survivors to wait years for cases to be heard. We need shelters and support, not more slogans. A woman escaping violence needs more than a pamphlet and a pep talk. She needs a safe bed. She needs therapy. She needs legal help. And she needs a job. Economic independence is the difference between survival and going back to her abuser. Stop asking why doesn't she leave and start asking what's stopping her from leaving. Spoiler alert, it's money, it's fear, and it's having nowhere else to go. The Gauteng Department's funding delays and cuts to GBV NGOs have placed vital services that provide desperately needed support to survivors at risk. This is completely unacceptable. These shelters are often the only lifeline for women and children fleeing violence. But there is some progress. Under Minister Dean McPherson, the Department of Public Works has allocated state-owned properties for use of survivor shelters. This is the kind of real-world, meaningful action that we need more of. Prevention isn't polite, it's powerful. Do we want to stop GBV? Let's start teaching our children from young. Teach boys that strength is not domination. Teach girls that no is a complete sentence. Accountability isn't optional, Speaker. We can't afford for the National Strategic Plan on GBVF to collect dust. We call on the Portfolio Committee of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities to track the money, the policies and the outcomes and to publish it. If you want to fix a crisis, you need to measure it. The much-awaited formalization of the National Council of GBVF is a step in the right direction, but make no mistake, The fact that it took almost 2.5 years to attain is an embarrassment, and it is an insult to every victim of gender-based violence and femicide. We will monitor the implementation of this council closely. We will make sure that the right people are appointed and that they fulfill their critical mandate. Technology saves lives. We need to be smarter and use technology to our advantage. We propose the development of a survivor support app, discrete reporting, shelter maps, and case tracking, and our forensic system must be digitized and decentralized. The current DNA backlog isn't a delay. It is a denial of justice for victims and their families. Honorable members, South African women are not statistics. They are not slogans, and they are not going to wait for another task team, another summit, another tragedy, or another name on the nation's lips. They're done. They're watching us, and they're done being polite. This House has the power to act, and every day that we don't, we add another name to a tombstone. Let us honor the victims, not with more speeches, but with more action. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Schikkeling. The next speaker is the Honourable Muela.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members. Honorable Speaker, I will never forget the day I was called to witness a gruesome incident where a white man in Limpopo shot 2 black women and fed their diseased bodies to his pigs. As I was still processing that, Honorable Speaker, I was further informed of a scholar transport from village Limpopo who had repeatedly sexually assaulted a 5-year-old girl who was making her way to school. As I switched on my TV, Honorable Deputy Speaker, I met with a flood of headlines detailing yet another incident of child sexual assault far in the Eastern Cape in a rural town called Matatiela. That is when I realized we have been overcome by a stubborn cloud of gender-based violence, and our institutional response is lagging in behind. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the crime statistics released for the third quarter for 2025-2024 year have revealed that a leading cause of murder on the reported crimes have been based on misunderstandings and other cases of intimidate partner violence involving alcohol, substance abuse, but these are not the circumstances that contribute to gender-based violence and femicide. It is important to acknowledge the violent culture that is deeply entrenched in our communities and map out strategies to overcome that violence to build healthy and conducive environments for all. Allow me to reflect on some of the strategies and responses by the South African Police Service as it relates to gender-based violence. We commend, Honorable Speaker, the work done since the establishment of Gender-Based Violence Desk, the Family Violence and Child Protection Unit, and the number of arrests and convictions which were made up to so far. It indeed highlights the serious light in which SAP, South African Police Service, considers gender-based violence and child abuse. However, I'm appealing for the rollout of these units to even the most rural and most remote towns and villages, because that is where a majority of these human rights violations occur, and they go unreported or are not treated with the seriousness they deserve. We further want to encourage the South African Police Service to invest more resources in our national forensic science laboratories. Forensic science labs assist with case management, including DNA evidence in gender-based violence and rape cases. The continued reluctance to engage forensic lab services and the lengthy turnaround time poses a risk to the administration of justice, and in some instances leads to the withdrawal of cases from the court roll due to insufficient evidence. We welcome the continued efforts from the South African Police Service to develop legislation to respond to the growing challenges pertaining to gender-based violence and other violent crimes. Drawing from the integrated crime prevention strategy, it is important that we look at policing not as an isolated service, but an essential part of a wider ecosystem of safety that need support and collaborative efforts from the communities, government, and even private sector industries. It is also important that I take this opportunity to appeal to the moral regeneration of our social fabric as a country. It is always a painful sight to witness trusted members of society, our priests, our fathers, our brothers, and uncles being perpetrators of these violent crimes against women and children. And it is in this breath that I call for active and resource community policing forums, ward and street committees to assist the police in reporting these devious crimes that are happening in our community. Honorable Speaker, I stand to speak against the culture of laziness in police officials who turn victims back and refuse to open a case where the complainant has not yet seen a doctor. It is important that I emphasize the importance of police behavior and conduct during their day-to-day interactions with the members of the public. The narrative of an unresponsive police service culture has to end. It must come to an end. We appeal to every member of the police force to take gender-based violence seriously. In the same note, we call on the police to do the job that is required of them and not to try to play the role of a mediator or a peacemaker when they are approached by the public to open cases. These are not just complainants. These are daughters. These are mothers. These are wives. These are nieces and nephews of our people. We need to take this pandemic seriously and enforce culture of tolerance towards gender-based violence. Honorable Deputy Speaker, as I conclude, I want to acknowledge that yes, we have the strategies in place, but where is the action? It seems we have taken the posture to be a petty parliament that laments on issues and continues with the business of the day. I challenge this parliament of the 7th administration to take seriously its oversight role on gender-based violence. The people of South Africa demand a reliable, efficient, effective, and accountable police force. It is important for the police to win back public trust, addressing matters on gender-based violence, and making sure that we are keeping our homes and streets safe for our people. It is indeed time to take action. We need to ensure that our people are safe and we implement and roll out all the services that will make sure that they put proactive measures to be able to protect our people and to protect our children and women where they are living. I want to take this opportunity to recommend that we need to ensure and make sure that we take reliable steps to be able to deal with this particular pandemic that is happening in our society. As I thank you, honorable members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Mwela. Honourable van der Merwe will now close the debate.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I think the last speaker, Honourable Mwela, just hit the nail on the head when he says, we've got the plans, but where is the action? Where we demand change and we demand it now. So, honourable members, I wish to thank all of you for participating in this very important debate, and thank you very much for your passionate inputs. It was important for us to take stock of where we are as a collective in terms of beating this national crisis. And like Honourable Kanile said, this fight requires a daily, year-long sustained focus, not only a focus when the 16 Days of Activism campaign rolls around. I thank the DM for mentioning the National Strategic Plan of Action on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide and its goals. But like Honourable Matri and Honourable Dennis said, these current plans and strategies seem not to be yielding the desired results. Honourable Mohammed from the MK, I think that blaming the DA for the GBV crisis in our country really misses the point of what we try to achieve here today. But the IFP agrees that we need an adequately funded National Council Against Gender-Based Violence, which has not been established as yet. And we need to ring-fence funding for NPOs, NGOs, shelters, and we need more to Dizela care centres. Honorable Malatsi and Dr. Leklape is correct when they say prevention is priceless and that we need to address the root causes of GBVF. And therefore, it's going to be of critical importance that the 7th Administration of Parliament puts at the core of its focus the issues around women, children, and persons with disabilities. And really, like Honorable Schikkeling and Advocate Sali reminded us, we don't need more empty rhetoric, more empty promises, more plans that will not be delivered on. We need real action, and we need to step up and deliver on the plans that are already there. All honourable members underscored the need for real accountability, which is key to winning this brutal war. And on behalf of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, which I lead, I can give the assurance that we plan to lead the charge in terms of demanding accountability. We plan to hold to account those who are failing women, youth, and persons with disabilities, and we will seek accountability for every one of our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, and our daughters that have been lost to this brutal war. They are not just statistics, but change starts with us, it starts with Parliament. We hold the power, and it's time for us to be united in fighting this national crisis that is gender-based violence. I thank you so much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable van der Merwe. Honourable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary session. The mini-plenary will now rise.